My wife has ADHD, neglects our kids, and humiliated me on Father's Day. After much consideration, I've decided to pursue a divorce. I, 43 years old, try to do my best to provide for my wife, 38 years old, and our 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, as well as my mother-in-law. I like to think that I am doing a decent job. Over the years, I have worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's degree and recently a master's in a STEM-related field, but I also worked 2 full-time jobs while finishing my second bachelor's degree and supported my wife through her schooling as well. She completed a degree that allows her to make good money, $60-70K/year, in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. However, with the birth of our 2 children, she has since given up on her career to be a stay-at-home mom for the time being. At first, it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's degree. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump, and we are now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We're far from rich but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little over $150K base plus bonuses. This past year, life has been overwhelming for my wife, so even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with one child while the other is now in school. Every day, my day starts around 5:30 to 6 a.m. I prepare the house for the day before the nanny arrives at 8 a.m. I get our oldest child up and ready for school, make breakfast, plan out my day, drop our oldest off at school, and return home in time to let the nanny in. My current task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% working from home. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day as my role involves managing teams on a global scale and overseeing industry projects. For the past month and a half, I have noticed that despite my wife claiming her life at home is stressful, her day starts at 10 a.m. After a week of working from home, I asked my mother-in-law and the nanny if this was always the case, and they both responded that it varies, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up, cooks, and then spends time scrolling through her phone or shopping online, which brings me to my concern. I am glad I can provide her with this lifestyle since we both grew up with limited means. I understand the possibility of postpartum depression, the stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled, and the fact that I may not be the best husband. But for what it's worth, everything is taken care of and then some. I manage the household finances, since she claimed she was too busy to do so. Pay all the household bills, cover my personal bills, pay her bills, track and perform all the upkeep of our house appliances, cars, pets, etc. And I also help pay for my mother-in-law's medical bills and car note. Despite this, my life is apparently much easier compared to hers. I can't decompress with her because she always feels the need to one-up me. If I have a bad day, she insists hers was worse because I'm lucky to go away and work. If my feet hurt from walking all day during work travel, she says it's nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her. For the past 2 years, I've been told I ruined her life and her opportunities. But when I remind her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mother-in-law has noticed a change in both me and my wife, pointing out that I have a greater attachment to my kids and that I've even hugged the dogs and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I'm in emotional survival mode. I am one step away from moving up the career ladder and one step away from finding love and comfort at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I am sure I will be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I am simping. But I am not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize aside from my kids appreciates and loves me for what I do. I am sure I will hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit. Which is fine. I grew up in a single parent/mother household. It is not easy. And honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny Monday to Friday, for one toddler while another child is at school, can you honestly tell me she is having the typical stay-at-home mom experience? Because neither my friends nor colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I am sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic, but it is what it is. To summarize, TLDR. It feels as if my wife has checked out of our marriage. We are only roommates where she can still reap the benefits of marriage. I am not asking for her to throw herself at me all the time and let me do whatever I want. I really just want to be told I am doing good and to offer me some form of emotional comfort as simple as a hug, but I guess as the man who ruined her life, I deserve it. Thank you for the replies. To add more context, never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I am literally an open book with work, name colleagues and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop, but on that note, she still does not know what exactly I do for a living at this time. We as a whole family, Her parents and mine have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses or skirts around the issue. Aside from my coming from a single mother household, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. I have tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. What I am receiving from the marriage was asked. Now, aside from my two beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent sex life mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's part of depression or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity does knock and I can perform still, but I never give in, because as cliche as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife and want to only be with her. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased. When I say she wakes up and cooks, she cooks for everyone in the house. Myself, kids, MIL, and even Nanny. Aside from breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids and her laundry, but seldomly folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean because they're work clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge. But after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50% is done by either MIL or myself, or sometimes Nanny if she feels like being extra helpful. Prior to Nanny, my MIL was the main help for my wife up until she had unexpected medical needs. So I opted to hire a nanny to help them both, more so when MIL is having treatments and recovering. Update: not sure if anyone would read this, but thank you for those who have reached out and chit-chatted. While I know I've kept my newfound friends here updated, I figured I'd just update my post and keep it short. I showed my wife my post the following weekend and she read it and all the comments. Long story short, argument: she left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. It's sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. I just need to add, this post got bigger than I expected from a venting post, but I've responded to a few comments. Nonetheless, thank you for the comments and DMs. And more so for the offers to let me ruin your life, huh? It's been the highlight of my day/night as I sit here drinking with my dog while everyone else is asleep. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. I just wanted to update those who have been kind enough to check up via DM and comments. Apologies in advance for the lengthy post. It's a bit of irony and coincidence that I made a follow-up from the update on 06 May 2024 I made on my original post during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I could really use another outlet outside of my therapist. My apologies if this isn't the storybook ending/destroying of a relationship people were hoping for. To save you a read, wife left? Came back like nothing happened. She made it about her. Nothing changed. I'm continuing to be suffering mentally, knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sister's. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully so was her whole family, including said sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family since she doesn't work and her sister and her family, husband and 3 kids, stays with their dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she just decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her, because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. Mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me, while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink, as I have been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked, we argued, we cried, we drank. One thing led to another and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally. It was about her struggles staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that and buy this or do that and not stress as much as they did. How easy my and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out, but I was met with a shouting match while trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife. Well, do you know how hard this is all for me? You're supposed to help me be happy. Me. So when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, FK me, get over it, right? Wife. We all have our own problems, you need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I am at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office or on the couch or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m., and sitting on her phone talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother-in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt that anything will change. Sadly, I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway, since during my wife's leaving the days seemed like any other day except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife, I'd lose my kids in the process. So I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story. Like a lot of men and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. First off, thank you for all the comments and DMs, some context and clarification, since admittingly my post was emotionally charged since I typed it up after another argument. Post-birth, our kids' pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child she scored significantly higher, and I should say I made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will say/think, but this is one of the reasons I'm not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run of our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to the ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first but that pain goes away, but I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them or something along those lines. I've told a few PPL I talked to in DM since my last post, a little more insight on my personal life. Prior to my promotion I was a PM managing teams and budgets, so out of habit I plan for a lot of what ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans if sadly things went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer, 3 actually. Know our rights and what each of us are entitled to. Have a draft settlement created and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want and am willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up, so while I'm venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my MIL's treatments go uninterrupted, and of course the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot and climb together to a better place. New update, I'm done. Wife said I don't do and am not shit in front of the therapist and family Father's Day dinner. She got served. She was mad. She is trying to act perfect and I'm just waiting while taking care of my family, kids, my mom, and MIL. Oh well, I'll just ruin everyone else's life too and my family. Secondly, to clear some confusion. I did not get 2 bachelor's and a master's while working 2 jobs at the same time as some readers are assuming. Bachelor's degree number 1 was completed in the early 2000s. Bachelor's degree number 2 was earned through online courses over several years, taking 2 classes per semester, all while I held down 2 full-time jobs. The first job was at a hospital with a 36/48 schedule, and the second job was at a big box store, where I worked 40 hours spread out over 7 days a week. I worked these jobs to pay for both my tuition and my wife's, as she decided to return to school before we had children. After completing bachelor's degree number 2 and entering the industry where I currently work, I was able to transition to 1 job and pursue my master's degree. So no, I did not earn 3 degrees simultaneously or in rapid succession. I'm surprised that I have to clarify this, as working 2 jobs while attending school isn't that uncommon, or at least that's what I thought. My wife chooses not to work. She does technically have a job. She just barely works it to the point we forget she has a job, as in she worked 1 day 5 months ago for 8 hours on a Tuesday. Kind of barely works. Her job and manager is really supportive, flex PRN model, and gives her a list of days they need coverage and she can choose to pick up a shift or not. While she can work more and only does just enough to keep up her license, She complains to our family of her career being on hold for one reason or the other, although she has the opportunity to work more if she opted to. All things considered, she has an available supportive circle around her for either decision she falls on. Our family, her job and I have made multiple offers and taken many steps to open that door for her to go back to work. That is nanny, MIL moved in to help, I work from home, her crazy flex per schedule, etc., etc. But here we are. I am and have been in therapy for myself already. Aside from what I deal with at home, my work can be very debilitating in regard to my mental health as well as physical at times. Since I can't find the support I need mentally and physically at home with my wife, I've opted to attend therapy rather than find comfort with someone outside of the home or at the bottom of a bottle. I've tried to express this to my wife, and as mentioned in my previous post, she has a habit of one-upping me. And here we are. My in-laws are still married. Given the circumstances in our home, my MIL moved in to help out my wife, while my SIL and her family moved back into their parents' house due to their own reasons. SIL and her family can save money while getting back on their feet, and my wife and I benefit from MIL's help, and we can keep a closer eye on her while she undergoes bi-monthly treatments. My wife, by means of questionnaires, is highly suspected to have PPD alongside with a history of symptomatic OCD, ADHD, amongst other ailments that over the years she refused to get evaluated for or refused to accept results given. I knew what I was getting into, and I loved and accepted my wife for these flaws as she did mine at the time. Spare me your gut, I don't feel sorry for you, or pity. I am like every other man who fell in love and wanted to give my person the best of me and the world I can offer. But again, here we are. There are many men who identify strongly with traditional masculinity or the red pill ideology who complain and say that I am simping over my wife. While I respect your opinions and perspectives, I will outright say that if this situation were only affecting my life, I would have left a long time ago. As one Redditor mentioned in a previous comment that stuck with me, I am the kind of person who will take a bullet for his kids. Perhaps it was meant in a different context, but I am committed to protecting my children from any physical or mental harm. I am willing to metaphorically take the bullet as needed. I believe that other fathers would similarly respond to the duty to protect their children, and that's why I endured as much as I have. For the time being, I would prefer that my wife direct any problems towards me rather than our kids. Thank you all for the comments and reaching out. I've met many strangers who have become great Reddit pen pals and some who have been in the know of every step that has been progressing to this point. I am surprised at how far this has gone, from other subreddits, other platforms, and even YouTube. Love me, hate me, say it's all fake, no matter where you stand, thank you for all the constructive comments and DMs to check in. Our kids and myself are going to be alright moving forward. Now for the update, the end of an era. This will be shorter than some expected, as really there's not much to say but just satiate the questions some of you may have had and give people the satisfaction of the I told you so moment on Reddit. After a hard push from our family via an intervention, my wife and I finally attempted to go to marriage counseling. I'm sure many of you can guess how well that went. Blame, tears, regrets, gaslighting, with a side of I am the reason for her life being ruined and horrible. Again. Just this time in front of a licensed therapist instead of Reddit or mom groups. In the end, everything the therapist suggested and noted went over her head and ignored as it was against the grain of her status quo. One thing I guess worth saying was the therapist asked if she could recall when she last truly felt happy. Her response was about 12 or so years ago. Please note, 12 years ago she was still in her 20s, childless. Living with her ex. A vastly different time and position in life. I know it's petty of me, but I guess if that's when she was last happy, it wouldn't be that far of a stretch for her to find that happiness again, since her ex is in the same apartment, job and place in life that he was 12 years ago. Which is fine, if that's how you want to live life. I try not to judge, but in my 40s with kids, going clubbing 3-4 days a week is not my jam anymore. And of course, I don't want my kids around a mom and company who drowns themselves in White Claws. To add, I know some will ask. I know and can confirm she hasn't physically cheated on me, but can't confirm if she did emotionally, if that's the right term. After said therapy session, I checked all her phone records and didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but I also didn't bother to check apps like IG or Snapchat. I know I'm probably boring, but shout out to all the Costco dads whose Sunday Funday includes making rounds with kids for samples. The following weekend was Father's Day, and this year is expected not that big of a celebration as it is for many dads out there. Our family got together to celebrate with a BBQ and just simple family time, and my wife treated it like any other day. Sleep in, get up, cook, phone, shop. Attempt to play with kids, phone. During said family BBQ, my wife said she felt ill, so she sat around most of the day while the rest of the family as a whole made the experience enjoyable. When everything was set up and the family all sat at the table, her parents and sister's family, my mother, our kids, admittingly it was a great spread. Nothing extravagant but just a great meal for everyone. I was conversing with my brother-in-law about both of our kids' school Father's Day activities, and I assume my wife overheard when I mentioned that it was a little sad to see some kids sit alone without their fathers during the breakfast with dad event I attended. She blurted out with a laugh loud enough for the whole room to hear, "It's not like you do anything anyway, I could have gone instead." At that moment I was red and at a loss for words, sitting there processing what she said in my head, while the dining room went dead silent. My MIL broke the awkwardness and in response said, "Well, maybe if you feel that way, one of you should divorce the other." My wife looked at my MIL confused that she would respond with that and laughed mockingly in my direction and with her hand pointing at me said, "As if another woman would want a man like him. Just look at you." While the room sat silent. I was angry, heartbroken, confused, and embarrassed all at the same time. In manly man fashion, I just nodded my head in silence, stood up and picked up my keys and got in my truck and drove off to get a drink while trying to ignore the cries of the rest of the family and our kids telling me to stay. I don't know what was said or done while I was out of the house the rest of Sunday, because I couldn't bring myself to check our house cameras. But when I returned early Monday morning, the house had a completely different feel. As usual, I woke up around 6, got the house and our oldest ready for school drop-off. Checked emails, checked messages, nothing out of the ordinary. As I was getting dressed to leave, my wife laid in our bed snoring lightly. All I could do was look at her and think of what we had, and now lost. I've decided. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I texted my lawyer that morning to move forward with serving her. Fast forward to last week, she was served at our home, reminder to people I had no choice but to be there because I work from home. She had, I guess what you could call a mini meltdown, and came into my office screaming how could I do this to her. Her mother intervened, and that was met with me supposedly turning her whole family against her. But I digress. I probably would have felt bad if it wasn't immediately followed by the rest of her week acting as if she's been this active and attentive wife and mother the past few years. Sure, people can say she's making an attempt, but she's made many attempts, and historically we fall back to where we've been. For those curious, I am aiming for full or at least majority custody of our kids. I already and will continue to cover all the expenses for our kids, insurance, tuition. Both of our kids will be attending private schools come fall, medical bills, etc. My MIL has given me the courage and strength that helped supplement my own mother's support throughout this. Basically, she is what I hoped the kind of mother-wife my wife would have been to our kids and me. Out of respect for my MIL as well as per my own mother's shared wishes, I will continue to help oversee and contribute financial help if needed during her treatments. While some may feel I should cut their whole family off, I know the hardships pushed onto a family while dealing with cancer and have dealt with it firsthand as a family member and care provider on both sides of the desk. All in all, I'm prepared to go to war if needed, but I just want a clean no-fuss divorce. My wife has no alimony coming, so sorry for the Redditors and mommy gang Facebook groups saying she needs to divorce me first and get that sweet, sweet alimony money. 1. We live in a state that does not typically enforce alimony. 2. She has a means of gainful employment immediately. 3. To help curb any possible problems, I will cover her insurance and bills until either divorce is finalized or when she gains full employment. So that's that. I'm done and waiting for the steps to be taken for everything to be finalized. Sorry it wasn't as exciting of a story with plot twists as some may have hoped for, but that's life. Not sure I'll update this once it's all finalized, which probably won't be for a few more months depending if we go to war or not. Am I the A for getting upset with my wife for secretly having an abortion after I clearly stated I didn't want children? I have been happily married to my wife, Clara, for around 3 years now. I love this woman to pieces. I don't want to get sentimental, but she truly is my other half and I cannot see myself with another woman, even now. Before we got married, I made my stance on children clear. I didn't want any. She agreed at the moment and I thought that was that. About a year and a half into our marriage, she brings up the question of children again. She asks me if I want kids. I say no, I don't. She hums and we go back to doing what we did before. It wasn't a conversation so much as it was an odd question this time around, but I didn't think anything of it. We had a very robust sex life but always took the necessary precautions. She has the implant and I use a condom around 90% of the time, so I wasn't worried. Her bookshelf recently broke, so I ordered a new one. I had wanted to build it as a surprise and put her books up on it for when she came home. While going through them, I noticed an old journal of hers. I immediately smiled and flipped through it. When we were in college, she'd carry it around. It was a future planning notebook or sorts. If she wanted something in life, she'd draw out exactly what she envisioned, add clip-ins, the whole 9 yards. Manifestation, if you will. She had shown me it in college after declaring that she wanted to pursue her doctorate, and I remember being stunned at the attention to detail. I mean, we were only sophomores and she knew exactly what she wanted to do, what she wanted to study and where she would take herself. It made me feel out of depth. I liked it. Anyway, I flipped through the journal, reminiscing about the past. I hadn't expected there to be any new entries, at least not anything recent that I hadn't experienced with her. But as I opened it up, I saw something I never thought I'd see. It was a section dedicated to pregnancy and baby prep. She had researched prenatal vitamins, OB-GYNs in our area, had images of cradles, etc. It was only 2 pages, but I remember feeling so sick. In my head, there was only one reason she'd put that in a journal like this. She wanted kids. Naturally, I was torn up. I kept telling myself I'd been upfront about what I wanted and if she hadn't, that was her fault. But the thought that she'd secretly been suffering because of me, that she was holding herself back from the life she wanted to please me, I couldn't stand it. I confronted her about it as soon as we came home and I found out the situation was a lot worse than I thought. Clara did indeed want kids, but claimed she wanted our relationship more and was okay with compromise. I asked her a million times if she was sure. I really wanted her to be honest and not feel like she had to hold anything back. She insisted that not having children wasn't a deal breaker for her, but I kept pushing. I couldn't understand why she'd put something that wasn't that important to her in that journal. In the midst of our conversation, she dropped the bomb. She told me she had an abortion a year and a half ago. Offered up the information like I should have been relieved. Like it was the proof she needed to convince me that she meant what she had said about children not being a deal breaker. I can't describe what I felt at that moment. What I'm still feeling. What I can say is that I have never blown up at my wife the way I did that night. I didn't put my hands on her. I would never put my hands on her, but it was not a pretty exchange. I just remember feeling hurt that she hadn't consulted me on such an important decision. That she went and had such a life-altering procedure without discussing it with me. That I didn't even fucking notice that it happened. I mean, those things have side effects, right? She would have been bedridden for days afterwards, in physical and emotional pain. How could I not have seen the signs? I'm still beating myself up about it. I remember her asking me if I wanted kids, but nothing about her emotional state for the rest of that week when she would have had the procedure done. How much can I really claim to care about her? I don't want children, I still don't. But I'd rather chew my left arm off than make her have an abortion, even more so now after she's told me she isn't really against having kids the way I am. I'd happily raise a kid if it meant she didn't need to go through something so drastic. I've been staying with my sister for the last week and a half. I needed space to think, so I left. I want to see her, to ask if she's okay, but I don't know what to do or say. I'm still unbelievably angry at her and at myself. I don't want to yell at her again. I think the first time around scared her pretty badly and I don't want to repeat that. My sister thinks I'm being petty, punishing my wife for something I would have agreed with regardless. But I wouldn't have fucking agreed. I don't know. Relevant comments. OP on not considering of prioritizing his wife's preferences when she is prioritizing his decisions. Comment 1. OP. To clarify, I never once said this. If that's how my post came across, let me clear it up. If she came to me as asked to start trying for a kid, in other words, to go off birth control and stop using condoms, my answer would be no. I've always been firm in that. She's never pushed the issue, but no amount of begging would entice me to plan to have a child. Having an unplanned child, on the other hand, wasn't something we discussed. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, but that doesn't help much here. Update. I woke up to lots amount of comments and outright hate, so I thought I'd clear a few things up. A lot of you were concerned about me snoping in Clara's journal. I met this woman when I was 6 years old. We had experienced over half of what she had written down in that notebook together. She's been letting me read her entries routinely since college, though I would read them more often back then. Like I said, I found her decisiveness incredibly attractive. But college was 6-7 years ago and times have changed. I'm not sure if she has other journals, but her use of this specific one died down as we got older, and so did my readership. I felt no qualms about picking it up and reading it that day because I quite frankly never have. This was not the first time I read that journal without her present, as I've been given express permission to do so. It was meant to be a quick trip down memory lane. I had no idea she had added more things, let alone pregnancy planning. She keeps all her old journals, sketchbooks, etc., in the same area, and this book was in that pile. You should have gotten a vasectomy. I'm not discussing my reasons for not wanting kids here, but I did discuss them thoroughly with Clara before we got married. Our reasons for not wanting children were very similar based on that initial conversation, but I guess hers wavered as time went on. How that turned me into an evil dictator that refused to hear her opinions out, I'll never understand. But I guess that's Reddit for you? I didn't get a vasectomy because I'm not sure that I won't want kids 10, 15 years down the line. I am positive I don't want them at the current moment, but I'm 27. Opinions and circumstances change. Regardless of its reversibility, it's marketed as a permanent surgery. Vasectomies are covered by my health insurance, but reversals are not. It simply made no sense to invest in something I wasn't sure could be undone if I didn't want it anymore, not when Clara and I were taking the necessary precautions to avoid pregnancy otherwise. She got on birth control way before we started having sex. I had absolutely nothing to do with that decision. As far as I know, she's quite happy with it. The chances of pregnancy with the implant are less than 1%, even less when using condoms as well. We talked about the decision together and ultimately decided a vasectomy wasn't the right choice. Someone actually went as far as to say that because I didn't get my vas deferens cinched, an unexpected pregnancy was inevitable. A 0.5% chance and inevitable are two vastly different things. You guys do realize that vasectomies aren't 100% effective either, right? Unless you're pushing for abstinence, I really don't want to hear it. We also don't go raw unless we both agree to it, which I would never pressure her to do. You verbally abused her. Clara and I both grew up in shitty homes. Our parents yelled and were extremely combative. After growing up in that environment, we agreed to avoid that kind of behavior in our relationship, and we do our best to keep to that. I have never raised my voice at her before this argument. I'm more on the timid side, so I imagine it was a shock for her to see me so angry. She also just doesn't do well with yelling in general. It wasn't my words, so much as it was my tone. Should I have raised my voice? No, but I'm not an infallible robot. My comment about not putting my hands on her was to draw conclusions away from physical violence. Clearly it wasn't taken that way and had the opposite effect. The exchange was heated on both sides, lots of things were said. It was the worst disagreement we have ever had, and we have been together for close to a decade, close friends for even longer. That being said, I still think it was on the tamer side of the overall spectrum, relative to other people. That spectrum might be a bit skewed due to my childhood, but take that as you will. You're a dick for leaving her for a week and a half. To be fully clear, this was a mutually respected decision. I told her I needed space to think. She suggested I take it outside the house. Granted, she wasn't the happiest when she said it, but we had just finished a heated argument. We texted the entire time I was at my sister's place. Very dull and mundane conversation, mostly pleasantries, but I didn't just abandon her. We weren't speaking audibly, but we weren't in contact. I don't know how else to phrase that. Things were just tense and very different from our usual level of interaction. Everything was surface level. We would check to make sure the other ate, showered, whatever else, but that was it. There was no continuation of our discussion while we were apart. We were both taking the time to make sure we were in the right headspace to have a proper conversation, as is common for our relationship. It just took me a bit longer to get there. She wouldn't have been bedridden. Abortions aren't that deep. I'll concede to the physical aspect of this. I've often heard them described as a bad period, and a lot of the women in my life tend to tap out during their monthlies, which is what I based my assumption on. I accept that it was incorrect. Though I'm not sure if I should, because half of you agreed with my take in the post, condemning me for not noticing, and the other half told me I was overreacting. Again, I guess that's Reddit for you. More importantly, I will not agree on the general take on the emotional aspect. At the time, I still did not believe Clara genuinely wanted to have an abortion after hearing her updated stance on having kids. I imagined her feelings would be on par with someone who experienced a miscarriage rather than an abortion because of this. I still do. The only thing that would change my mind at this point is Clara herself. You should go to couples counseling and seek therapy individually. We are both in different types of talk therapy and have been for several years. I'm not sure how helpful couples therapy would be on top of that, but I'm not opposed to it. Asking if you wanted kids was enough. She doesn't owe you anything. Reading through the comments, many of you thought this, and we're simply going to have to disagree. As the father of the child, the decision to abort should not have been made without my clear and explicit knowledge that she was pregnant. We weren't separated at the time, nor did I cheat, and contrary to popular belief, I'm not abusive. I deserve to know. I won't apologize for expecting my wife to consult me on family planning decisions. I'd do the same for her 10 times over if roles were reversed. Call it controlling. I really don't care. Asking if I want kids is a completely different discussion than terminating a pregnancy. I am on my way home now and will update if the situation changes, likely sometime this week. I'd ask for well wishes, but I think it's clear none of you are rooting in my favor. Fucking hell. Edit. Took out the numbers to prevent text from looking long and blocky. Final update. Before I got into where Clara and I are now, a lot of you had some misconceptions concerning things like me reading Clara's journal, vasectomies, and other things. I made a separate post addressing those. Read it, don't, whatever. I came home the morning following my initial post and Clara and I had a very long conversation. We both apologized for letting the previous conversation get out of hand and acting out of character. I also explained why I left in the first place and apologized for raising my voice. She's especially sensitive to that kind of thing, so I addressed it first. She forgave me and said as long as we could keep things calm this time around it would be okay. She was more interested in finding out what I was so deep in thought about that I was gone for so long. Again, we do take breaks from conflicts from time to time and revisit them when we're calmer, though this was the first one where I physically removed myself from her proximity. I told her how I initially felt after reading her journal entry. I hadn't been mad then. Part of me was confused. We had agreed on no kids before getting married after all. The other half was riddled with anxiety. Contrary to what you may all think, I adore Clara. She is quite honestly one of only good things this life has given me. I didn't want to lose her, but if she wanted kids badly enough to put them in her journal, I wasn't sure what that would mean for us. She downplayed the importance of the entry. In her view, not everything she puts into the journal is something she's genuinely hoping for. Some things are just nice to fantasize about, and not every fantasy is meant to be reality. I was honest. I told her that her words were hard to believe given how meticulously she had written everything down and planned it out. The last thing I wanted was for her to harbor resentment over what her life could have been. She assured me that wasn't the case, but I'm still unsure. Talking about the abortion itself was hard on both of us. I wanted to know if she was in pain, what signs I had missed. I didn't really press for details on the procedure, but we talked a lot about how she felt afterwards, why she hid it and how she came to her decision. I just held her in my arms and listened for the most part. It was gut-wrenching to say the least. It turns out that the second time she had asked if I wanted kids occurred a month or two after she had already had the procedure done. She had asked because she was contemplating whether or not to tell me about it. I guess she had ultimately decided not to. She told me I was actually with her the day she took the pills. I remembered the day because she had been crying and I wasn't sure why. When I asked, she cited cramps, so I got her a heating pad and laid down with her. Her periods have always been pretty hard on her, so I guess I didn't think much of it. In hindsight, I should have realized something was up because she hasn't had bad cramps in years. Still, I'm glad she didn't go through it completely alone. Much later that day, I asked her why she didn't come to me when she realized she was pregnant. In her eyes, she was protecting our relationship. She knows our circumstances, my reasons for not wanting kids, my stance on abortion. She didn't want to burden me with having to choose between the two, and so she made the choice herself. As hard as I try, I can't understand or accept her reasoning. Her decision to go through this alone, while meant to shield me, inadvertently communicated that she doesn't trust me to support her or handle the truth. All I understood is that she feels like she can't lean on me when she's in trouble. And if that's the case, I'm not sure why we're married. She's always been independent, but this is the first time I've felt completely blindsided by not being included. I asked up and down if I'd given her a reason to doubt me, to doubt my commitment to her. If she felt I wasn't a reliable partner, etc. She said no, but that just makes all this harder to grasp. She said she was afraid saying anything would change how I viewed her, our relationship, but I'm having a hard time distinguishing insecurity, anxiety from reasonable doubt. I asked her if she knew I loved her, how much I care for her, the lengths I would go to make her happy, etc. She laughed a little and reminded me of a line from my wedding vows. We shared private vows before our ceremony and I had said quite a bit. I was a little shocked that she remembered that portion at all, let alone word for word. We transitioned to talking about the promises we made to one another, and just times in our relationship where we had complete trust, faith in one another. It helped put us both in better moods and ended the night on a lighter note for both of us. We're doing okay at the moment. Not quite where we were before, but getting there. Everything's still incredibly raw, including our eyes. We both broke down 5 minutes into the conversation. Clara is against couples counseling right now. I'm ambivalent, as we're still working a couple of things out on our own. I'm not sure how helpful a third party asking what steps we're willing to take to improve trust and transparency will really be, but I'm open to anything at this point. We're not leaving one another. Issues or not, we both think it's clear that there's still an abundance of love between us, and we don't want to throw that away. Some of you will be happy to know that Clara and I decided on a new rule for ourselves. Clara was a lot more upset about my leaving than she initially let on. From now on, the distance between the top and bottom floors of our home is all the space either of us are allowed to take. We need to cool our heads. If proximity really does become an issue, the max either of us are allowed to stay outside the house is 48 hours. So no more week-long stays at my sister's. Excluded from Christmas for being a plumber, I cut off my sister's law school money. Now she's begging, and I'm better off without her. Okay, so I've been sitting on this story for a long, trying to figure out where to even begin describing this disaster. I suppose I should introduce myself first. I'm 32, unmarried, and own my own plumbing business. Yeah, I know, it's not the most glamorous job, according to certain people, including my family. But, to be honest, I make a lot of money and enjoy my job. There's something rewarding about fixing difficulties and assisting others, even if it occasionally requires dealing with their literalism. LOL. Amanda, my 26-year-old sister, is currently attending law school, which I have been paying for. Yeah, you read that correctly. I've been paying her full tuition since she started. Her lover was a hotshot doctor at the local hospital, a real piece of work. But we will get to him later. So this is where things went awry. About a week before Christmas, I received this call from my mother. Now, you have to realize something about my mother. She never calls just to speak or check on me. It's always because she wants something or there's a family issue that needs to be resolved, usually involving money, to be honest. However, this call was different. She begins with a strange, hesitant tone, as if she is about to tell you that your dog has died. Then she lays the bombshell on me. I'm not invited to Christmas this year. Just like that. There is no notice, discussion, or anything. At first, I assumed I misheard her, as if she had said they were altering the date or something. But, nah. She goes on to say that it might be best if I sit this one out because they want to keep things comfortable for everyone. I'm sitting there, thinking, what the actual, one, since this is so unexpected. We've always celebrated Christmas together, even while I was working long hours to get my business off the ground. Sure, my family has always been odd about my job. They enjoy the money I make, but God forbid they tell anyone what their son and brother does for a living. So I pressed her on it, asking, what's the real reason? She began hedging and hawing, talking in circles about professional looks and everyone's comfort, but she refused to give me a clear answer. It wasn't until later that day that I learned the true cause, from my cousin Sarah. She'd overheard Amanda discussing it with our mother earlier that week. Apparently, my lovely sister had informed our parents that having me for Christmas would be awkward because I did not fit in with her and her boyfriend's professional standing. Allow that to soak in for a minute. My own sister, who I've been helping through her law school, was ashamed to have me for Christmas because I'm only a plumber. She was concerned about how her fancy doctor partner would react to having to sit at the same table as someone who worked with their hands for a career. The more I thought about it, the more things fell into place, like how Amanda never invited me to any of her law school events, despite the fact that I was paying for her to attend, or how she always changed the subject when her friends asked what her brother did for a living, or how she never introduced me to her boyfriend, despite the fact that they'd been dating for nearly a year. Do you know what the worst part was? My parents agreed with her. They truly believed it was okay to exclude their own son from Christmas because his employment would make their beloved daughter's boyfriend uncomfortable. The same son who has been providing for the family since he was 18. The same son who built his own successful firm from the beginning. The same son who has been paying for their golden child's law school education without complaint. My mother tried to sugarcoat it with phrases like, well, honey, you know how these professional circles are. And maybe, next year, when you've developed your career more. What the boss does that even mean? I own my own business. I have staff. I earn 6 figures performing honest work. But apparently it isn't evolved enough because I don't wear a suit and tie to work. I spent the entire day stewing over this information, growing increasingly irritated. Not the heated, angry type of pissed off, but rather a cool, calm knowledge that my family, particularly my sister, had been exploiting me while being ashamed of me the entire time. That's when I decided it was enough. If I was too embarrassed to bring to Christmas dinner, my money would be too embarrassing to spend for law school. What kind of message would it send to my sister's fancy beau if he discovered her law degree was paid for by a gas-passing plumber? But hold on, this is only the beginning. The real, what iTales show began when I made the decision to take action. And let me tell you, karma is especially when it comes with the accompanying student loan burden. So, after learning that I was barred from celebrating Christmas because my blue-collar profession would insult my sister's boyfriend's delicate sensibilities, I was in a strange state of mind. You know that feeling when you're so enraged that you suddenly become strangely calm? That is where I was at. I spent the entire night reading over previous text messages and discussions with Amanda. And holy, guys, the signs were everywhere. I was simply too blind, or perhaps foolish to see them. For example, last spring, she had a graduation party to celebrate finishing her first year of law school. I had truly paid for the entire year, but I didn't receive an invitation. When I approached her about it, she lied about it being a minor issue in her study group. Later, I learned from Facebook that it was a large party at a posh downtown restaurant. Then there was the time when she required a new laptop for class. Despite the fact that I am very knowledgeable about computers, she asked me to simply transfer the money to her account rather than accompany her to choose it. Nowadays, it's almost a requirement. Even in plumbing, we use tablets and specialized software to provide job bids and schedule appointments. She said that she was too busy to go shopping together. But now I'm quite sure she didn't want to be seen with her plumber brother in the Apple store. Looking back, it's sort of funny in a sad way. For example, whenever she needed money, which was often, she would text her humiliating blue-collar brother. But when it came to acknowledging my presence in her fancy new life, the radio is silent. I decided to dig. The benefits of having a cousin who is still on the family group chat, LOL. Amanda had been preparing for the Christmas exclusion for weeks. She told our parents that her boyfriend, Craig, yes, his name is Craig, was from a very prestigious family, and she was concerned about making a good impression. Apparently, having a plumber sibling may harm her professional prospects, or some elitist, like that. Want to know the true kicker? My cousin Sarah, bless her messy, drama-loving heart, forwarded me screenshots of Amanda's remarks from the family chat. She had actually written, and I'm quoting this directly, "I just don't want Craig to think our family isn't, educated. It could affect how his family sees me, and they have so many connections in the legal world. Educated? Educated." I wanted to respond and inform her that the reason she's getting an education is because her uneducated plumber brother pays $43,000 per year in school. But I held back. I was beginning to formulate a strategy, and sometimes you have to play the long game. As I thought about it, I realized it wasn't only about Christmas. This was about years of my family, particularly Amanda, treating me as a filthy little secret. They were pleased to accept my dirty plumber money, but God forbid they acknowledge how I earned it. Here's a fascinating truth about plumbing that most people don't know. We have to study extensively. For example, years of apprenticeship, license examinations, and ongoing education to stay current with new legislation and technologies. I probably spent more time researching water systems and construction codes than Amanda did studying tort law. But because I work with my hands, they treat me like an idiot who couldn't make it in the real professional world. The reality is, I selected plumbing because I am skilled at it and saw an opportunity. I began working as an apprentice right out of high school, learned everything I could, obtained my licenses, and eventually launched my own firm. I currently have 3 vehicles on the road, 2 full-time staff, and more work than I can handle. But to my family, I am still the embarrassing brother who fixes toilets. I kept thinking about all the times I went late at work or did additional work to make sure I could pay Amanda's tuition. All those times I postponed purchasing new items for myself or contributing more to my retirement account because family came first. Meanwhile, she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her new lover and his family. That's when my cousin threw another bomb at me. Craig's family did not appear to be overly concerned with such matters. His uncle, a successful contractor, built their family house. Amanda had simply assumed they would look down on me since that is how she sees me. I sat with all of this information for a few days, monitoring the family group chat via Sarah. They'd removed me from it weeks ago, ostensibly to minimize any discomfort surrounding Christmas arrangements. Amanda was going on and on about how pleased she was to host Craig for Christmas dinner, how his family had ties at all of the city's large law firms, and how this could be her opportunity to earn a summer position through his contacts. No one stood up for me the entire time, not my parents, nor any of my other relatives. Nobody remarked, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't exclude the guy who's been supporting Amanda through school." Everyone was just pleased about Amanda getting a prestigious internship through her boyfriend's family. That's when I realized exactly what I needed to do. If they wanted to pretend they didn't have a plumber in the family, I'd help them make that lie a reality, beginning with Amanda's tuition payments. So, after stewing over all this nonsense for a few days, I decided it was time to make my move. But here's the thing. I didn't want to write a furious text or anything. I wanted to do it in such a manner that they couldn't distort my words or make me look like the evil person, which is, incidentally, my family's favorite hobby. I waited until I knew Amanda's next tuition payment was coming due. It was due in about 2 weeks, and she was always really worried around this time. Normally, she'd start dropping subtle hints about remembering the payment deadline, like, "Oh, the school's been sending reminder emails," or something. What about this time? The radio is silent. She must have assumed that the payment would simply come, as it always did, even after they had barred me from attending Christmas. Quick side note, I had been paying my tuition payments straight to the institution using their online portal. Amanda had set it up herself when she first started, and she provided me all of the login information, which was really convenient since she considered me as her personal ATM. Right? Anyway, I got into the portal and noticed my upcoming payment. $21,500 for the spring semester. That's when I realized how much money I'd been putting at her studies while she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her boyfriend. Do you know how many toilets you need to fix to generate that much money? Answer: a lot more than most people realize. So I phoned Amanda. I didn't text her, I called because I wanted to hear her voice when I dropped the bomb. She picked up on the third ring, sounded angry, as if I was interrupting something essential. "Hey," she remarked in that tone that shouts, "make it quick, I'm kind of in the middle of something." "Oh, sorry," I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "Just wanted to talk about your tuition payment. It's due soon, right?" Her voice changed instantly. Suddenly, she became all lovely and interested. "Oh yeah, thanks for remembering. It's due on the 15th. You're still okay to cover it, right?" "Actually," I replied. "I've been thinking about what you told Mom and Dad about Christmas, about how having a plumber brother might embarrass you in front of Craig and his family." There was complete stillness on her end. You could almost hear her brain short-circuiting as she attempted to figure out how to spin this. "That's not who told you that," she eventually exclaimed. "Does it matter?" I inquired. "Is it true or not?" More silence. Then she sought to enter damage control mode. "Listen, you don't understand. Craig's family, they're really particular about these things. His father's a judge. His mother's on all these charity boards. I just thought it would be better if you pretended your brother doesn't exist." I completed for her. "Because he's just a lowly plumber." "That's not fair," she complained. "I never said that. I need them to take me seriously if I want to have a future in law. You know how these circles work." I couldn't help laughing. "Actually, I don't know how these circles work. I'm just a plumber, remember? But you know what I do know? The exact amount I've paid for your law school so far. Want me to break it down for you?" She began to say something, but I continued going. "First year costs $43,000. Second year, first semester cost $21,500. Plus all the other costs, your laptop, textbooks, and that special study program you simply had to have. According to my calculations, that's around $770,000 thus far. Everything was paid for by your embarrassing plumber brother." "Why are you acting like this?" she moaned. "You know how important this is for my future. Craig's family has connections at all the top firms, and having a plumber brother would ruin that." I inquired. "Even though that plumber brother is the only reason you're in law school in the first place?" "You promised to help me," she replied. "You said you'd support my dreams." That's when I said it. "Yeah, I did, when you were proud to call me your brother. But if I'm too embarrassed to have Christmas dinner, then I guess my money should be too embarrassing to pay for your tuition." "You guys," the screech that came out of her mouth sounded like a pterodactyl's tail being stepped on. "You can't do that," she shouted. "The payment is due in 2 weeks. What am I supposed to do?" "I don't know," I responded, feeling strangely peaceful. "Maybe ask Craig. I'm sure his fancy doctor salary could cover it. Or is my dirty plumber money the only kind you're willing to touch?" She began crying, full-on dramatic sobbing. "Please," she asked. "I'll tell Mom and Dad I was wrong. You can come to Christmas. Just please don't do this to me." "No," I replied. "I don't want to come to Christmas. I don't want to embarrass you in front of Craig and his family. In fact, I don't want anything to do with any of you anymore. Consider this my last payment to the family that's ashamed of me." I hung up while she was still crying and begging and immediately banned her phone number. I poured myself a drink and braced myself for the impending eighth storm. After that, everything began. My mom came first. She called around 5 times in a row before I eventually answered. The moment I responded, She launched into guilt trips, which are her specialty. She was crying about how I was wrecking the family and Amanda's future due to a silly misunderstanding. Silly misunderstanding? I asked. She literally told you she was ashamed of what I do for a living. The same job that's been paying her tuition. She didn't mean it like that, Mom explained. You know how Amanda is. She just gets caught up in trying to impress people sometimes. She looks up to you. I almost choked on my drink. She basically barred me from Christmas because she was humiliated by me. How the hell is that looking up to me? Then Mom took a different approach. Consider what this will do to her relationship with Craig. His family might greatly benefit her career. Oh, so you want to talk about Craig? I interrupted her off. It's funny how important he and his family are, yet your own son isn't even good enough to sit at the Christmas table. She started blubbering about how that wasn't what we meant and how I was taking everything too personally, which is a typical mom move, trying to make me feel like I'm overreacting when they're the ones being nasty. When my father called, he went straight for the angry approach, which was unsurprising, and he started ranting about how I was being selfish and vengeful, calling me a little one for endangering Amanda's education. Isn't that Father of the Year material? Let me get this straight, I told him. I'm a little maindan for not wanting to spend thousands of dollars on someone who is ashamed of me. Make it make sense, Dad. We raised you to be better than this, he hissed. Family supports family, I replied. Really? Is that what you intended when you agreed to exclude me from Christmas? Was that a supportive family? He tried to explain himself by claiming that sometimes we had to make sacrifices for the better welfare of the family, which apparently included kissing Craig's ass in the hopes that he would boost Amanda's career. But what really struck me was that no one apologized for how they treated me during any of these calls. Instead, it was all about how I was bad for sticking up for myself, how I was being petty and vengeful, and how I was letting my pride get in the way of family. Then came the flying monkeys. My aunt called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior, my uncle texted, saying I needed to man up and be the bigger person, and even my cousin Sarah, who told me about Amanda's lies, messaged me, saying maybe I was taking things too far. But you know what? None of them offered to help pay Amanda's tuition themselves. The best part? Amanda actually went and told Craig what was going on, and I guess she thought he'd offer to help with the tuition instead. According to Sarah, who's still keeping me updated, Craig got really quiet and started asking questions, like, why hadn't Amanda ever mentioned she had a brother? Why didn't she introduce them? Why did her brother pay for her law school in the first place? Craig couldn't understand why Amanda would keep her brother's existence hidden just because he was a plumber. It turned out that his uncle, the one who built their family home, started as a plumber before becoming a contractor, and Craig had actually worked summers with him in high school. When Amanda tried to explain her reasoning, she just dug herself deeper. She started talking about professional appearances and social circles, and Craig got more and more upset, saying he couldn't believe she'd hide and disrespect her own brother, who'd been supporting her education, just for some perceived social status. Craig told her the next day that he wanted time to think about their relationship because her actions revealed a side of her personality that he didn't like. Who knew he had principles? Meanwhile, my parents were constantly blowing up my phone. Mom alternated between crying and begging, Dad between cursing and threatening. Amanda kept calling from other numbers after I blocked hers, and I ultimately turned off my phone for a few days. It was all about how I was ruining everything by not just shutting up and paying like a good little ATM, but I was done being their ATM. If standing up for myself made me the bad guy in their eyes, so be it. It was better than being their doormat. After a few days, Craig came over to Amanda's apartment. She probably thought he was there to make up, but no, he broke up with her. He said he couldn't be with someone who would treat their own brother that way, especially someone who had supported them so much. He said it made him question her values and who she truly was. Amanda lost her indecavas and contacted me crying and shouting from yet another new number. She's had more burner phones than a drug dealer at this point. She said I'd wrecked everything, that Craig broke up with her because of me, that her life was falling apart, and it was all my fault. I laughed and replied, no, sis. Craig ended his relationship with you after discovering your true identity. I just stopped helping you hide it. She threatened to tell everyone that I had sexually assaulted her in high school, that she would report my business to the Better Business Bureau for fraud, and that everyone would know what a terrible brother I was. Go ahead, I told her. Tell everyone your brother is a monster because he checks notes, paid for your education while you tried to conceal his existence. See how that works out for you. Then she went back to begging, crying about how she couldn't afford law school without me, how she'd have to drop out, how she'd lose all of her friends, and how her life would end. Guess you should have thought about that before you decided I was too embarrassing to acknowledge, I responded. Then I disconnected. After Craig dumped her, Amanda had a complete mental breakdown, according to Sarah. She began showing up at our parents' house at random hours, crying about how her life had ended. She had apparently told all her law school friends that her boyfriend was going to help her with tuition, so when he dumped her instead, she was completely screwed. The deadline for the tuition payment was approaching, and she still hadn't figured out what to do. She tried applying for emergency loans, but guess what? Those take time to process, and she left it way too late. Plus, she'd need a cosigner, and our parents' credit is a mess. I wonder why they keep trying to live beyond their means. Sarah texted me. 911, Amanda just posted on Facebook that she's heading to your shop to make you face what you're doing to her. She appears unstable? I barely had time to warn my guys before she blasted through the door like a tornado in designer clothes, hair all messy, mascara running, full crazy ex-girlfriend energy, except she was my sister. How could you do this to me? She screamed in front of my entire staff and about 3 customers, I'm your sister, you're meant to look after me. I attempted to encourage her to go outside or at least lower her voice, but she seemed determined to cause a disturbance. You are ruining my life. She screamed, all because your delicate feelings were harmed. You are so selfish. One of my clients, a sweet old lady who had been with us for years, stood up. Young lady, she asked. Is this the brother who has been paying for your education? Amanda turned around as if she'd been smacked. That's none of your business. Well, the elderly lady added, you just made it everyone's business by storming in here shouting. And, based on what I've heard, you excluded your brother from Christmas because you were ashamed of his profession, but you still expect him to pay for your education. That's known as biting the hand that feeds you, in my hometown. The look on Amanda's face, she genuinely didn't know how to handle someone calling her out on her BS who wasn't family, but she recovered fast and shifted to crying, like full-blown theatrical sobbing. You don't understand, she cried. He is doing this to punish me. He's attempting to harm my future because he's envious of my achievement. I couldn't help laughing. What success, Amanda? The success of convincing your partner to dump you? The success of maybe having to drop out of law school? The success of embarrassing yourself in front of my staff and customers? At the very least, I'm making an effort to establish myself. She shot out, not just playing with pipes all day like some. She had to stop herself, perhaps realizing she was about to degrade plumbing in front of a group of plumbers. My senior employee, Mike, went up, and heck, a large fellow who's been with me since I started the business, said, Ma'am, in a dead serious tone, I think you should leave now. For the past 5 years, your brother's pipe playing has provided for my family's needs. It paid for my children's braces and my wife's automobile, and it appears to have paid for your law school as well. So maybe offer some respect. Amanda looked around and realized she wasn't receiving the reaction she had hoped for. Everyone was staring at her as if she were insane, which, to be honest, she was. She tried one more time. Okay, I'll tell everyone what type of brother you really are. I'll post about it all over social media. Go ahead, I urged. Make sure you mention the bit where you had me banned from Christmas because you were embarrassed by my employment but still expected me to pay your tuition. I'm sure that will bring you a lot of sympathy. She stormed off after that, but not before knocking down our sign and clipboard and kicking a display of business cards off the counter. Very mature, sis? The elderly customer approached me after Amanda left, stroked my arm, and said, You know, my late husband was a plumber. Put all 3 of our children through college. They never once expressed embarrassment about what he performed for a living. Then Mom looked me straight in the eyes and said, You're doing the right thing, honey? Sometimes family members have to learn the hard way that respect is a two-way street. After that scene, I had to sit down with my staff and explain the situation, and they were remarkably nice about it. Mike even remarked that his family's Thanksgiving drama was boring in contrast. So after the whole explosion at my business, Amanda decided to go nuclear. She started calling every single member of our extended family, telling them this sob story about how her cruel brother was attempting to ruin her future out of spite. But here's the thing about family drama. Everyone loves to get involved, but no one wants to actually assist. The first one was Aunt Karen. Yes, that's her name, and yes, she lives up to it. Who got me all wound up about family obligations and how I was selfish. This is the same aunt who borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago for emergency dental work and never paid it back. The conversation went as follows. How could you do this to your sister? She demanded. She's striving to improve herself. Funny, I responded. I do not recall you agreeing to assist pay for her law school. You still owe me for your teeth, by the way. There is no more sound. That's different, she sputtered. How dare you bring it up? Is it different? I inquired. Because, from where I stand, this entire family enjoys talking about helping each other until it comes time to actually help. Then suddenly, everyone goes quiet. She hung up on me after that. I guess the reality hurts more than those teeth did. Then there was Uncle Steve, my father's brother. He's this wannabe big shot who's always boasting about his investment portfolio but never has money when the restaurant bill arrives, and he tried to lecture me about family investments. Think of it as an investment in your sister's future, he told me. When she's a successful lawyer, she'll be able to help you. I laughed so hard at it. Can you help me? She couldn't even bear to have me for Christmas dinner because I'm a plumber. But, okay, tell me more about how she'll help me once she's successful. Well, he said. Maybe you could help her finish school, and she could pay you back. Great idea, I remarked. Why don't you lend her the money then? You're always raving about your fantastic investments. Here's an opportunity to invest in my family. He suddenly had to leave. It's amazing how this keeps happening. The best part was that no one who called to guilt trip me offered to really help Amanda themselves. They all had opinions on what I should do with my money, but their own wallets remained firmly closed. I'm done with her, and I'll keep you all posted if anything occurs. Final update, my sister had me excluded from Christmas because I'm only a plumber, so I took away her law school funds. Hey everyone, I figured I'd post one last update because so many people have been messaging me asking what happened. I heard from a mutual friend that my sister showed up at her ex-boyfriend's house uninvited and tried to talk to Craig's parents. She told them this whole sob story about how she was about to lose everything and needed help, but she didn't mention hiding me because I'm a plumber. Craig was obviously present and gave them the complete truth, but his father, the judge, appeared to glance at her and say, "Young lady, if you're trying to be a lawyer, you should know that attempting to manipulate people by telling half-truths is not a good start to your career." In the end, she had to drop out of law school because she couldn't get private loans without a cosigner, and no one in the family was willing to cosign after what happened. When Grandma got involved and told them they should be ashamed of themselves, even my parents stopped asking for my help. Amanda is now working as a paralegal at a small law company. According to Sarah, she claims it is only temporary until she can return to law school, but we all know that is unlikely. As for me, business is stronger than ever, and I've actually grown to 2 more trucks and employed 4 new workers. I still meet up with Craig and his uncle Mike for beers on occasion, and it turns out we get along really well when there's no family turmoil involved. My parents tried to reconcile around Thanksgiving, but only because they needed help with their mortgage. I declined and told them that maybe they should ask their successful lawyer daughter for help. Oh wait, funny thing is, I actually feel better now that everything's out in the open. No more pretending, no more being the family ATM, no more walking on eggshells about my job, just me, my successful business, and my actual friends who don't give a can what I do for a living. Thank you for your support, Reddit. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to confirm you're not insane for standing up for yourself. Edit. Holy, this blew out. Thanks for all the accolades, and to everyone who DM'd me about needing a plumber in my region. Sorry, I'm trying to remain anonymous here. Edit 2. To everyone who says I ruined my sister's life, she did it herself. I simply stopped paying it. I discovered my husband had cheated with my best friend while I was working overseas at a baby shower they hosted for their unborn child. I returned from my work trip earlier than scheduled. I didn't tell anyone I was returning. I wanted to surprise Miguel. When I arrived on our street, I noticed a few automobiles parked in front of our house. The garden was adorned with blue and pink balloons, and a banner proclaimed, "Welcome our little miracle." I parked my car a block away and walked over. The door was slightly open, and music and laughter could be heard from inside. When I walked in, I froze in the center of the living room. Carmen, my dearest friend, was clearly 6 months pregnant. My mother-in-law, Rosa, was softly massaging her belly as my mother poured drinks. Gifts were arranged on a beautiful table. "So, is the nursery ready?" my Aunt Elena said. "Almost," Carmen responded. Miguel insisted on painting it himself. He's been working on it every weekend. My spouse strolled in at that very moment, bearing more drinks. He approached Carmen and hugged her from behind, his hands resting on her stomach. "We just need to set up the crib," he told us. "We picked it out together last week." I watched as my mother stiffened when she saw me. She hurried over. "Anna, we weren't expecting you today," she said softly, taking my arm. "Let's go outside. We need to talk." I pushed free from her grip. "Talk about what?" I inquired. About how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working in another country. The buzz in the room subsided. Carmen was the first to notice me. Her face became pallid. Miguel stood motionless, his hands resting on her tummy. Anna, he started. Don't you dare, I interrupted him. How long have you been cheating on me? No one responded. My father, standing in a corner, was unable to look me in the eye. I can explain, Carmen replied, taking a step forward. We didn't want you to find out like this. Oh. And how were you planning to tell me? After the baby was born? Or when they turned 18? My mother-in-law stepped in. Anna, please think about the baby. Carmen doesn't need this stress in her condition. Her condition? I asked, laughing dryly. The same condition I was in 2 years ago when I lost my baby. Where was your concern then, Rosa? The hush that ensued was deafening. My mom tried again. Honey, I know this is difficult. Difficult for whom? I demanded. For me, who worked nonstop for 9 months while my husband was sleeping with my best friend. Or for all of you, who had to keep up the charade. Miguel eventually walked away from Carmen. Anna, can we talk privately? Don't make a scene. A scene? I sneered. No, Miguel. A scene would be telling everyone how you convinced me to take that overseas job. How you said we needed the money to start our family. I turned to face Carmen. Did he tell you that? Or did he say he was lonely and abandoned while his cruel wife chased her career? Carmen began crying. It wasn't like that. We didn't plan this. Of course not, I replied mockingly. I suppose you just tripped and fell pregnant by my husband? These things happen, right? The visitors started shifting uncomfortably. Some grabbed their bags and prepared to go. My father has finally spoken up. Anna, calm down. You're upset. Upset? I laughed bitterly. No, Dad, I'm perfectly calm. In fact, I'm grateful. My mother frowned, puzzled. Grateful? She repeated. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Because now I see everyone for who they really are. My husband, the liar. My best friend, the traitor. And my family, the cowards who chose to protect this lie instead of me. I strolled over to the present stand and chose one at random. This one's yours, Mom, I said, holding it up. You bought a nice gift for your son-in-law's mistress's baby. Anna, please, my mother begged. I ripped the package paper open. The baby's attire was white with blue embellishments. How thoughtful, I replied, my voice full with sarcasm. I hope you kept the receipt. Miguel moved closer, attempting to take the gift from my hands. Enough, Anna, you're making a fool of yourself. Making a fool of myself? I snorted. No, Miguel, you did that all on your own, getting my best friend pregnant while I was paying all the bills. My mother-in-law stood up in indignation. This is too much, she exclaimed. Miguel was just looking for the happiness you couldn't give him. Always busy, always working? You're right, Rosa, I responded coldly. I was too busy working. Working to pay the mortgage on the house where your son was sleeping with my best friend. I gazed around the room. Every familiar face suddenly resembled that of a stranger. You know what? I said. You can keep the house, the furniture, the gifts. But, Miguel, I suggest you get a good job because you won't have access to my money anymore. Miguel's cheeks turned pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how, while I was overseas, I wasn't just working, I was also consulting a lawyer. I have proof of every penny I spent on this house, on you, on our marriage. I turned and went out of the house, not looking back. My hands were trembling, my breathing was uneven, but I refused to give up in front of them. They did not deserve to see my tears. I went away, ignoring the curious eyes of the neighbors, who had most likely heard everything that had happened. I got in my car and slammed the door shut. My fingers grew white from the tight hold I had on the steering wheel. My vision had dimmed, but I refused to cry. I started the engine and drove away from that nightmare, with no destination or direction. My phone was full of messages. I missed calls from my mother. Miguel sent text messages. Even Carmen. Please, Anna, we need to talk. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. You don't understand the whole situation. Oh, I understand. I really understood. I realized that while I was working to support my home, family, and marriage, they were all together. Every time Miguel called and said he missed me, I knew he was telling a lie. I realized that whenever Carmen stated she was busy and couldn't talk, it was because she was busy with him. A nasty taste entered my mouth. Disgust. I'm disgusted with myself for not noticing it sooner. After driving for a time, I turned into the parking lot of an unrelated hotel. I needed someplace to breathe. I wasn't returning to that house. That house now served as a monument to my humiliation. I headed to the front desk and reserved a room for a few days. The receptionist gave me an odd look, possibly due to my untidy appearance, but handed me the key without asking any questions. When I entered the room, I shut the door and collapsed on the bed. Only then did the weight of everything overwhelm me. I curled up and hugged myself, letting the tears flow, tears of fury, disdain, and a deep, stifling agony that constricted my chest. But I couldn't do this forever. I needed to do something. The next morning, I went directly to my lawyer's office. He was already aware of my condition and had all of the essential documentation prepared to guarantee that I get out of this problem with as little damage as possible. I want to start the process today, I stated firmly. Divorce, property division, everything. And I want it to be clear that Miguel won't see a single cent of my money. He nodded. You have more than enough evidence to contest any claim he might make. The house is in your name, all the expenses were covered by you, he has no rights to anything. I took a deep breath. Good. Then let him find out the hard way. I walked out of the office with an unusual sensation of relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt in charge of my own life. My phone vibrated. Miguel. I ignored it. Minutes later, a message appeared. We need to talk, please, Anna. I merely said, talk to my lawyer. Days passed, and the calls and messages continued. Until one afternoon, while I was drinking coffee at a cafe near the hotel, someone approached my table. Miguel. He looked terrible, deep eye bags, unkempt hair, but I had no pity. Anna, please. He sat across from me without being asked. I didn't want you to find out like that. I crossed my arms. Oh? But how did you want me to find out? With an invitation to the baby shower? He ran his palm over his face, tired. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. I made a mistake. A mistake? I scoffed. Getting my best friend pregnant was not a mistake, Miguel. It was a choice. You decided to sleep with her. You decided to lie to me. You opted to have everyone cover for you. He lowers his head. I was lonely, Anna. You were never here. You were always traveling, always busy with work. I gave out a sour laugh. And why was I busy, Miguel? Because I was the one paying for our damn house while you sat at home doing nothing. He said nothing. You want to know the most ironic part? I asked. I took that position because I believed we were creating something together, and I made sacrifices thinking it was for the greater good. But while I was straining myself to exhaustion, you were ripping off my dearest friend. He gazed at me with desperation. I know I messed up, Anna, but can't we fix this another way? I leaned forward and looked right into his eyes. We're correcting it. My lawyer has already filed for divorce. You will not receive a penny from me. And as for that child, I hope you are a decent father, because I want you out of my life. Anna, please. It's over, Miguel. I stood up and went away, not looking back. The news quickly spread. My true friends, those who had not deceived me, stood by my side. And my family? Oh, they attempted to contact out. My mother contacted me several times and tried to justify everything. We didn't want to hurt you, sweetheart, it was complicated for all of us. You need to forgive. Forgive? I moved on. I eventually rebuilt my life. I left the motel and got a new apartment. I concentrated on my profession and future. And Miguel? He quickly learned that life was not as easy without the comfort I had supplied. A few weeks later, I got another note. Can we talk? I miss you. I smiled and deleted the message without responding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt liberated. When I finally received word that Miguel had been legally served with the divorce papers, I knew his real misery had only begun. He attempted to reach me in every manner possible. He called me dozens of times each day. I've sent an unending number of messages. He even showed up at places I frequented. But I did not respond. I did not give him a chance. I refused to allow him to control me. One night, when I was returning to my apartment, I noticed my mother standing outside. Anna, we need to talk. I rolled my eyes. I already knew what it was about. We have nothing to talk about. Miguel is desperate. You're taking everything from him, she exclaimed, as if I were the antagonist in this scenario. I crossed my arms. Oh, now he's the victim? Honey, he made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should ruin his life, my mom replied. I laughed without humor. He ruined my life, Mom. He cheated on me, got my best friend pregnant, and all of you covered for them. And now you have the nerve to tell me that I'm being cruel. She groaned and reached for my hand, but I pulled away. What you're doing to him? This isn't right, Anna. Anger flared in my chest. Oh, you want to talk about what's right? I snapped at you. Was it right for me to pay the mortgage alone while he was screwing my best friend? Was it right that I worked my ass off while he played the perfect husband? Now, he gets to deal with the consequences. She looked at me as though I were a monster. He has nowhere to go, she muttered. I shrugged. Not my problem. She shook her head, disbelieving. I didn't raise you to be this way, Anna. And I didn't expect my own mother to take the side of a cheating bastard. I turned around and walked into my building, not looking back. Days passed, and Miguel's plight only worsened. Since I had paid for everything, he was now drowning in bills. The mortgage payments were past due, and without my money, he swiftly fell into financial despair. Then came the eviction. I knew it was coming when I got confirmation that he hadn't made any payments. And I made it a point to personally see the moment he was forced to leave my house. When I arrived, the place was in disarray. Boxes were spread over the front yard. Miguel was disputing with the eviction officer. Carmen stood behind him, gripping her pregnant tummy with a terrified gaze. Anna, he said when he spotted me. You can't do this to me. I crossed my arms, feeling a dark sensation of contentment grow within me. I can, and I did. This isn't fair. I lived in this house. No, I replied coldly. I paid for this house. You were just a parasite living in it. His face flushed red with frustration. Where the hell do you expect me to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. Carmen gazed at me with desperation in her eyes. Anna, please, please. She had the audacity to look me in the eyes and say please. I took a step towards her. Oh, so now you can say my name? Before it was just, I hope she never finds out, wasn't it? She lowers her head. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it is. And now, you and Miguel have to deal with it. Miguel rubbed his hands across his face, appearing weary. You don't have a heart, he mumbled. I tilted my head. Funny, because you sure loved that heart when it was paying all your bills. He opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it again when the officer approached. Time's up. You need to vacate the property now. Miguel's expression changed to one of utter terror. He looked around and realized he was out of options. He grabbed a box and banged it on the ground. You just want to see me destroyed, don't you? I leaned in closer, meeting his stare without pity. Yes. He clenched his jaw and marched out, Carmen trailing behind him. I stood there, watching him leave, broken, homeless, and powerless. Over the next few days, my entire family turned against me. My aunts called me. My mother arrived at my apartment again. Even my father, who normally remained out of things, attempted to intercede. Anna, he's sleeping on your mother-in-law's couch. Don't you think this has gone too far? No, Dad, I don't. Carmen is pregnant, they have nothing? Great, I remarked, my voice full of sarcasm. Then Miguel can finally do what he should have done a long time ago. Get a job. My mother threw up her hands, exasperated. You're obsessed with revenge. And you're obsessed with protecting a cheater. They couldn't change my mind. And Miguel? Oh, Miguel was in ruins. There is no home. There's no comfort. He no longer had access to the money he had been stealing from me for years. I heard from some mutual friends that he had started working odd jobs to make ends meet, but it wasn't enough. And then the unavoidable occurred. Miguel walked up to my apartment. He appeared unhappy, thinner, with black circles beneath his eyes. Anna, please, I have nothing left, he said. I stared at him. I know I need help. I inclined my head and pretended to think. Like I needed help when I found out you were cheating on me? He closed his eyes, annoyed. I was an idiot. I know that. But I can't change the past. I crossed my arms. No, but you sure as hell can suffer in the present. His palms tightened into fists as he swallowed his pride. You don't have to be this cruel. Oh, but I do, I replied, my tone mocking. I learned from the best. With that, I slammed the door in his face. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Miguel was now discovering what life was like without me. And me? I was finally free. Miguel sunk deeper, exactly as I predicted. There is no home, no money. There's no comfort. He had transformed from a privileged, dependent husband to a desperate man who hopped from job to job simply to stay afloat. And me? I moved on. I did not feel sorry for him. In fact, every time I heard of another calamity in his life, I felt a strange kind of joy. It was a great taste of justice to know that all he had done to me would come back to haunt him. And then I got the finest news I'd had in months. Carmen has filed for divorce. I discovered it from an acquaintance, one of the few people who still dared to speak with me after everything had transpired. She ran into me in a cafe, paused for a bit, and smiled slightly before dropping the bombshell. She left him. I blinked. What? Carmen. She filed for divorce. And she wants alimony. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, and it was a big, true laugh from the core. Are you serious? I said, still chuckling. Dead serious. Miguel can't hold a stable job, and she doesn't want to be the one supporting him. Oh, the irony was great. Carmen had swore Miguel was her genuine love. I worked hard to support him, but he clung to me like a parasite. I had now done the same thing to him as he had to me. I left him when he was no longer useful. And she wants alimony? I inquired, still beaming. Yeah. She claims he promised to take care of her, and now that she has a baby, she needs financial support. I couldn't stop laughing. Please tell me, I responded, chuckling. Does Miguel even have money to pay her? My acquaintance smirked. No. I lost it. Miguel hadn't simply lost everything I'd given him, now, even the lady he betrayed me for was financially ruining him. Karma had come for him. And this time, he had no one left to leech from. I had to see it. The following week, I made an unintentional appearance at a location I knew Miguel still frequented, a dingy bar where we used to hang out. One of the few places he could still afford. He was sitting at the counter, resembling a ghost of his old self. Thinner. Dark rings appeared under his eyes. His beard is untidy. Of course, he was holding a cheap beer. I strolled in gently and took my time, then sat 2 seats away. He quickly noticed me. His expression hardened. What do you want? He asked quietly, his voice raspy and exhausted. Nothing, I replied, picking up my own drink. Just enjoying the view. He breathed deeply. Are you happy now? I sipped, enjoying the moment. Yes, very. He scoffed and shook his head. You think this is funny? Miguel, I find this hilarious. You abandoned our marriage for Carmen, and look where you are today. She left you and took what little you had left. He ran a hand over his face, obviously fatigued. You don't understand. Oh, I understand completely. Tell me how your great love fell apart so swiftly. He remained silent for a long time before glancing at his empty glass. She said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer. I grinned. Funny, right? That's exactly what you said about me. He closed his eyes, his jaw stiffening. You don't get it, Anna. Oh, I do. You were only suitable for her when it was convenient. Now that you can't provide the comfortable life she desired, she threw you away like junk. He did not argue, because he could not. I rose up, prepared to depart. You know what's the best part? I asked, staring down at him. You deserve every bit of this. And I walked away, leaving Miguel to drown in his own despair. Following that day, I cut off all ties to my past. I alienated myself from my family. The hypocritical aunts who often told me to forgive. My mother insisted that I had gone too far. I owed nothing to any of them. I only owed myself. So I started afresh. I completely reconstructed my life. I bought a new apartment exclusively for myself. I sold everything that reminded me of that miserable period in my life. I donated some items. Others were burned. Miguel and Carmen were eliminated. I went out more. I met new folks. I enjoyed life without carrying dead weight on my back. For the first time in years, I had control over my life. And as I moved forward, Miguel kept falling apart. Months later, I learned that he had attempted to appeal the divorce decision, arguing that he deserved alimony instead. Of course, the judge laughed at him and refused everything. I also discovered that Carmen continued to drain what little money he had left. And me, I have never felt better. The world was finally as it should be. I was free. And Miguel was receiving just what he deserved. My sister betrayed me after I took her in, having an affair with my husband, getting pregnant, and demanding I leave so they could start a family. I'm 34 years old, and a few months ago, I allowed my sister, Julie, 28, to move in with me because she was in a bad financial situation. Julie lost her work when her firm closed, and 2 weeks later, she became gravely ill with West Nile virus. After discussing it with my parents, I agreed she could move in with me for a few weeks so I could care for her, monitor her recovery, and help her save money on rent because it was evident she wouldn't be able to work again soon. She was at rock bottom, and I was the one who stepped up to help her because our parents live far away and she does not have many friends who can support her. I believed it was the appropriate thing to do, assist a family member or friend in need. But how did she compensate me? By engaging in an affair with my husband. On top of that, she had the audacity to tell me that I should leave so they could start their happy family, because she is now pregnant. This all came to light a few days back. Julie invited my husband and me to sit down because she had something important to say. I believed she was finally going to move out after recovering well in recent weeks. I imagined she was going to proclaim that she was ready to return to work and leave our life. Instead, she revealed that she and my husband had been having an affair for the past few weeks, and she was now pregnant. When I looked at my husband, I could see he was just as shocked as I was. Julie had clearly not discussed it with him before telling me. That explains a lot. After admitting she was pregnant with my husband's child, she apologized for what had transpired and said she knew how surprised I was. But she said, "What's done is done, and the past can't be changed." She then had the arrogance to ask me to leave the house since she would be uncomfortable around me in her current state. I was furious, but I remained calm. I discreetly assured her that I wasn't leaving because the house was mine. If anyone had to leave, it would be her, and she could take my unfaithful husband with her. They could have their happy family anywhere they wanted since I was going to file for divorce and did not want to see one of them again. I spoke as quietly as I could, trying to keep my wrath under control and handle the matter with dignity. They had already surprised me, so I was not going to let them see me lose control. When I told her this was my property and I was not leaving, she thought I was joking. But then my spouse stepped in and confirmed that I was not joking. He explained that he owned nothing, which surprised Julie. He had apparently lied to her about everything. For reference, my husband and I have been together for 8 years and married for the past 5. A few months after our wedding, I took a gamble and launched my own business. Fortunately, it did quite well, so my husband and I decided he could stay at home and pursue writing full-time, a passion he has always enjoyed. For the past 4 years, he's been working on his big novel while doing housework. We didn't have children, so there wasn't much to do. The house and everything in it belonged to me because I purchased them, and we both agreed that owning everything made sense. I bet he regrets it now. When my husband acknowledged to Julie that he didn't own anything and had lied, she lost it. She began ranting at him, calling him a phony and a liar, and claiming she had been duped. It was pleasant to see her lose her cool with him, but I was unconcerned about their conflict. I just wanted them out of my house. I had to intercede and tell them to stop yelling at each other because I wanted them to go right away. I didn't give them much time to pack, I simply wanted them out of my sight. To his credit, my spouse understood he couldn't persuade himself out of this. He understood how much I treasured my self-esteem and dignity, and he knew I'd never forgive adultery. So he discreetly walked into our bedroom and began packing. Julie, on the other hand, dropped on her knees and begged me for forgiveness. She stated she'd do everything to correct it, but she needed a place to live and couldn't be evicted, especially since she was pregnant with my nephew. The mention of family infuriated me. I grabbed her arm, yanked her up, and pushed her out the door. I was tough, but I didn't care. I was infuriated. I was furious that she dared to call us family after sleeping with my husband. She continued to wail and beg on the porch, but I closed the door. Then I went to the guest room and hurriedly put all of her belongings into her luggage before throwing them outside. I warned her to leave or I'd contact the cops. She kept crying, but I simply slammed the door and returned inside. A few minutes later, my husband emerged with his baggage and apologized sincerely. I pretended to not hear him. Julie screamed and begged on the porch for approximately an hour after he departed, but I turned on my headphones and ignored her. I eventually sensed the silence, and realized she had finally departed. That night, I called my lawyer, explained everything, and stated that I intended to file for divorce. I had planned to notify my family and friends later, but my dad called the next day. They thought what I had done was terrible. They accused me of being unkind and inconsiderate to Julie, who had recently been through a lot. I found this unusual because my parents had always treated all of us equally. It wasn't like Julie was their favorite. But when they started defending her, something didn't feel right with me. They informed me that they knew she was pregnant and that I couldn't kick her out of the house in that condition, especially because she was between jobs and recovering from a terrible illness. They told her it would take some time to get back on her feet. And, anyway, she didn't have anyone else who could take care of her like I could. Her friends were coping with their own money problems, jobs, and families, so they couldn't care for her. My parents insisted that as her sister, the least I could do was forgive her ignorance and be there for her. Furthermore, they reminded me that my husband had seduced her, not the other way around. They claimed he told her that he was in charge of our finances and a prominent novelist and screenwriter. He reportedly did not want celebrity, thus he remained incognito. My sister, being naive, believed everything and thought he was important. That's why she believed his falsehoods. But then things got worse. She claimed she was having an affair with him and believed they could drive me out of the house together. Unfortunately for them, their scheme failed. Especially because they had not even synchronized their stories. When she admitted everything, she wrecked it for both of them. So I stood my ground. I looked her in the eye and said, "What sister? I don't have a sister." Then I argued that I had every right to kick her out because she chose to betray me and my husband. It didn't matter if he played a role. They both opted to stab me in the back. It made no sense to kick him out and let her stay as if nothing had occurred. I didn't care if she was pregnant or unemployed. I had previously weighed those concerns before allowing her to stay with me for months. How did she compensate me? By having an affair with my spouse inside my own home. Besides, it's not like she was significantly pregnant and unable to cope on her own. She was barely a couple of weeks along. Even if she was 9 months pregnant, I would have kicked her out. What she did was awful. She was ready to throw me out because she thought the house belonged to my husband, so I consider it poetic justice. But my parents insisted I was being too tough. They focused on how I handled the matter rather than what she did. I was bored of hearing the same arguments, so I hung up. Since then, we have not spoken. Do you believe I was wrong to kick my pregnant sister out of my home? Update 1. I understand that some people think forcing a pregnant lady out of my house is wrong, but keeping her under my roof after what she did would be insanity. Fortunately, most people agree I was correct and believe she should find another place to stay. Yesterday I blocked my parents. This scenario has taken a significant emotional toll on me, but I am unable to stop working. I'm the boss, therefore I have to have a tough demeanor at work. It's business as usual, but when I return home, I completely broke down. The emotional pain is overwhelming. A few days ago, my lawyer and I filed for divorce. My husband will be served soon, and I doubt he will oppose it. He knows me well enough to know I will not let him off the hook if he tries. But, even though I am sure of my decision, it still aches. Winning the divorce will not magically make things better. I can't believe that after 8 years together, he'd betray me, with my own sister. I truly believed we were in love, that we would grow old together. Now I'm questioning everything we've ever had. Perhaps this was not his first affair. Perhaps this is not his first arrest. The thought of that tears my heart. But all I can do now is accept it and try to go on. He is the only one that has not attempted to contact me since I kicked him out. My parents and Julie have tried, but only to persuade me to let her stay again for free. My folks are taking her side, which is absurd. In my initial post, I mentioned that my parents always treated Julie and me equally. Now, I'm not too sure. I never had big expectations for Julie. We weren't best friends, but our friendship wasn't horrible. That is why I agreed to help her and allow her to stay with me. We had an extra room, and I thought, why not? My parents also supported it, and I assume that's what families do. But I didn't expect her to betray me like this. It hurts when someone you've been assisting for months stabs you in the back. Acceptance is even more difficult with my parents. They have always been reasonable and fair, so I anticipated them to be furious with Julie. To be fair, they were. Our chats made it plain that they disapproved of her activities, but they insisted that the damage is done, and now we need to move on. I'm not sure what's gotten into them, but I'm quite disappointed. I feel like I've lost all respect for them, and I'm not sure if it will ever be recovered. I'm emotionally drained. Mentally, I'm just focused on work because my personal life has completely collapsed. I haven't even informed my pals what's going on, but I know I'll have to eventually. My spouse and I have many shared acquaintances, and I'd rather they heard the truth from me than what he says. At this point, I'm not sure what to expect from anyone. Currently, I'm focusing 2 things. Ensure that my work does not suffer. Handling the divorce. I'm fairly positive my hubby won't object. I've been fair with the terms, but there's always the possibility of the unexpected, so I'm gathering the essential papers just in case. Aside from that, I'm attempting to keep my thoughts as clear as possible. The last thing I want is to spin out of control. Sharing my feelings here has been quite beneficial. I really thank everyone who has reached out, commented, and offered support. It means more to me than you realize. Update 2. My spouse, as I had predicted, did not dispute the divorce. He texted me to confirm that the terms were fair. In another message, he stated that he had been thinking about how to apologize to me but couldn't come up with anything that didn't sound weak or dishonest. So, he decided to simply say it. He is sorry. He admitted that he lied to Julie to impress her because he felt inadequate. He felt purposeless because he didn't own anything, was financially dependent on me, and didn't have any children. His novel was not progressing, and he felt as if he had squandered 4 years on something pointless. That irritation led to sadness, but he couldn't accept it. To himself, let alone to me. Then Julie arrived. Without considering how wicked it was, he began lying to her to inflate his ego. He claimed to be in charge of our finances and successful in his work. Eventually, they slept together. He expected it to be a one-time error, but it spun out of control. Despite his guilt, he could not stop. It became his technique of avoiding all that was wrong in his life. When Julie became pregnant and we had our argument, everything fell apart. He said he truly regretted everything. He admits he wrecked what we had, but he claimed it was the first and last time he cheated. He implored me to believe him, hoping that one day I would forgive him. I cried after reading that message. It was another reminder of what I had lost. I felt I knew this man. That we had a solid connection based on love. But everything fell apart in one day. Losing that trust is painful, and I know everyone who has experienced divorce or betrayal understands how I feel. A part of me wanted to detest him. To concentrate on all the bad things he has done. However, it still hurts. I hated myself for crying at his message. But after I finished, I gained enough strength to block him. I didn't respond. He did not deserve a response, especially now, when everything was so raw. After a while, I became even upset over what he had said. All he needed to do was talk to me. I never made him feel bad for staying at home and working on his novel. I'm not a really creative person, I've never been interested in writing or anything like that. Except now, I suppose, because I need to get this off my chest. But I admired his artistic side. I saw nothing wrong with him staying at home. Perhaps his weak masculine ego couldn't withstand it. Perhaps other people made comments that made him bitter. But after 8 years together, he could have at least told me what was going on. We married because we wanted to support each other, and I would have been there for him. Maybe we could have worked things out together, but he decided not to. He relied on Julie instead, which is how we ended up in this predicament. The more I think about it, the more horrible and tragic it appears. He lied about so many things to make himself look bigger and better. It is pathetic. I loved him for who he was, but it wasn't enough for him. This will never make sense to me. At least with Julie, I understand her motivation. She desired my life without making any effort. She felt she could accomplish this by becoming pregnant and moving in with my so-called wealthy spouse. But now, I can just choose to ignore her existence. In a few months, I'll be finished with the divorce, and I won't have to see or worry about him again. Update 3. It's been a few days since my last update, and I've enjoyed some tranquil days. But this morning, my folks arrived at my residence. It was unusual because they had rarely visited my father's hometown since moving there to oversee the family business with my uncle. Usually, Julie and I had to go see them. The fact that they flew to see me indicated something significant. But I knew they were just here to chat about Julie. So, as I opened the door, I informed them directly. If they came here to talk about her, I didn't want to hear it. There's only one Sunday a week, and I wasn't going to waste it rehashing the same theme. I had said what I needed to say, and there was nothing further to talk. I made it clear, they could only come in if they apologized to me first. They had two options. Apologize, leave. I set very clear boundaries. My parents, however, insisted that they had come particularly to discuss Julie. They stated that we needed to discuss this since the way I was treating her and them was not appropriate. To them, we were family, and families deal with things differently. Once again, they began with the family angle. And, like with Julie, I lost my tolerance. This is not how families treat one another. At least not in the type of family I'd like to have. I will offer them this. In this family, we approach things differently. My sister sleeps with my husband, and I kick her out of the house. That is obviously different from most families. I lay everything out for them. They tried to stutter and argue, but I didn't let them. I rushed through everything they could have said. By the end, my mother was in tears. But they were on my land, and I could talk to them as I pleased. Especially since they decided to trouble me this morning. The entire conversation should have been addressed to Julie, the person who truly did something wrong. Not me. After I finished ranting, my mother was sobbing so hard that my father informed me he never wanted to communicate with me again. He called me a terrible daughter for making my own mother cry, the lady who gave me life. But I don't care. They can call me insane if they want. I know I am not, and that is sufficient for me. If anyone is insane, it is them. Or my sister. And honestly, Perhaps all three of them. Update 4. It's been a month since I last updated. I haven't contacted anyone in my family, including Julie, and especially not my parents. I just know that they've been sending her money. According to several others, my soon-to-be ex-husband is currently living with his parents. He intends to relocate to another state after his divorce is finalized. Before you ask, I have no idea what he intends to do about his child. Most of our friends now have a clear understanding of what happened. The majority have begun to cut him out of their life. A few people are trying to remain impartial and avoid becoming engaged. As for me, my life is slowly but steadily getting back on track. I'll do whatever it takes to keep my peace now. I'm not exactly joyful yet, but I'm peaceful, which is a significant improvement over last month. Little by little, I know I'll be happy again. Following all, bad things seldom last forever. Update 5. This update is very recent since some new developments have occurred that you may be interested in learning about. My sister lost the baby and blamed me for it. According to her, the stress I produced led to her miscarriage. My parents are also on this mission with her. The bright side is that they don't annoy me directly. This is all coming from neutral folks who claim they are not taking sides but nonetheless accuse me of killing a baby out of pride. It's funny, though, because none of these folks have welcomed my sister into their houses. So, by their logic, they're equally culpable as I am. If my sister was concerned about her pregnancy, she should not have slept with someone else's husband, particularly her sister's. At the very least, she should have used protection. Nothing in this circumstance is normal. But when people make such illogical allegations, it isn't worth my time or energy. Update 6. My ex-husband contacted me a few hours ago, and you will not believe what he said. No, he did not beg me to return. We didn't end on such bad terms, which is why I reacted. He admitted he was wrong and, to his credit, made the divorce procedure simple. I don't harbor grudges against him, not because he deserves them, but because I don't want to waste my time being angry or thinking about him. No cheater is worth it. What he told me, however, was quite interesting. He confirmed that my sister had never been pregnant. He called to let me know since he had heard everything stated about me and wanted me to know the truth. He told them the same thing. Apparently, he'd been pressing her for proof of her pregnancy and even volunteered to accompany her to a doctor's appointment multiple times. She constantly avoided it. She eventually announced that she had lost the baby. When he asked for evidence, she didn't have any. He spoke with my parents, who also had no proof. There is no record of her becoming pregnant or losing the baby. She simply chose one day to inform everyone that she had miscarried, and that was it. So now, all of the claims against me for causing her to lose the baby are meaningless. My parents have attempted to contact me to reconcile, and they have even ceased financially supporting her now that they know they will not be grandparents. But really? It is too little, too late. I don't care what they do to my sister anymore. When I was betrayed, all I needed was their support, the kind that any moral parent would give a child in my situation. So, no. It's a no for them too. In conclusion, my sister lost a brother, a home, and my assistance because she decided to sleep with my husband and fake a pregnancy. My parents lost a daughter because they chose lies over the truth. I think the three of them should go to Vegas and try their luck. Perhaps gaming will be better for them than family. My parents wanted me to have a secret wedding to avoid hurting my selfish sister, but I refused and cut ties with them. I, 27, female, recently got engaged to my longtime boyfriend Jonathan, and I couldn't be happier. I told my parents last week, and while they sounded thrilled and congratulated me, I had a feeling something was off. But I didn't think much about it. They called yesterday to say they'd be able to attend for no more than an hour. Furthermore, they required that I marry in secret and keep the news from everyone. I couldn't believe what they were asking me to do until they explained the rationale. My younger sister Kelly, 24, female, is a brat. I know people say this about their sisters when they're younger, but we're both adults, and she's still a spoiled brat. We had not spoken in the past 3 years. She couldn't abide anyone else being the center of attention, even for a second, and my parents did nothing to discourage her attention-seeking behavior. I ultimately cut her off when, on my 25th birthday, she got drunk and made a scene in front of all my friends. I could not have invited her, but my parents persuaded me, and it was easier to give in than to argue with them. She screamed at me about how I was a loser and would always be, and how I could never compare to her. She did this in front of all of my friends, and if they hadn't intervened, she would have thrown her drink in my face. That was the last time we communicated before I blocked her on all of my social media accounts and stopped contacting her. My parents weren't happy, but I couldn't take it any longer. I had spent my entire youth trying to get others to notice me, But Kelly made sure that didn't happen. I was done living under her shadow. I had already moved out of my parents' house, so I was able to cut her off, and that was the last I heard from her. My parents attempted to persuade me to attend her wedding last year, but I wasn't interested at all. I'm glad I didn't go since the guy she was marrying, the alleged love of her life, was my high school lover. He dumped me the night before prom after Kelly asked him out. She seemed to be completely innocent, but I knew the truth. I cried for hours about it. Kelly disliked me. But, yes, that was Kelly. She recently divorced her husband after he cheated on her with his secretary for about 3 months. For the time being, everything is kept under wraps, but people will ultimately find out. She had an expensive wedding, which my parents paid for, something they will never do for me. My parents now want me to make my wedding low-key since they don't want to disturb my sister's peace at such a tough moment in her life. My father even refused to walk me down the aisle because he wanted to be present for Kelly and proposed that we postpone the wedding. I couldn't believe what they were asking of me, and I still don't. They just kept going on about how I should keep my wedding a secret for Kelly's sake and avoid making a big deal out of it so as not to hurt her. I was speechless, so I hung up without saying anything. Honestly, I had nothing to say to them. I suppose I should have known that when it came down to it, my parents would always choose Kelly above me. I just couldn't believe my parents weren't there for me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. It's been a few days since I last spoke with my parents, and they've been texting and calling me nonstop, begging me to stop sending wedding invites to our family. They were scared that if I sent them out, my sister would find out about my wedding, and they did not want her to be hurt. I finally broke down and contacted them back to inform them that they were not welcome to my wedding either. I told them I was tired of being their second choice and that I no longer wanted them in my life. Needless to say, they did not take it well. My mother instantly began recounting all of the things they had done for me, reminding me that I owed them. So I told her that they had just done the bare minimum for me while consistently going above and beyond for Kelly. They never truly cared about me, and they never will, not in the same way that they cared about Kelly. I eventually accepted it. I assured them that no matter what, I was still going to send out invites to all of our family in a few days, and there was nothing they could say or do to stop it. The argument escalated from there. My parents began speaking negative things about me, emphasizing that they were correct in supporting Kelly since I was a waste of time and money. They even claimed I should have been booted out of high school for trying to steal Kelly's boyfriend. Yes, that is the tale Kelly told them. They then threatened to spread the word about what a terrible person I was, accusing me of rubbing Kelly's wedding in her face. They promised me that they would do everything in their power to prevent people from attending my wedding. Have I gone too far? Am I the bad one for not inviting them? They reacted horribly, yet they are still my parents. Update 1. It's been a few days since I spoke with my parents. I awoke this morning to a text from Kelly asking to meet me. Obviously, I'm skeptical about what this implies, especially because we haven't spoken in 3 years and this is an unusual moment for her to seek out. I texted her back, explaining that I was extremely busy and couldn't see her, and that whatever she needed to say could be communicated via text. But she insisted on talking in person. I'm pretty perplexed right now. Update 2. I did meet her. I know most people told me not to, but I couldn't ignore it. And honestly, I'm glad I went. She has changed. A lot. Like, seriously. She started by apologizing to me, and I could tell she really meant it. There were tears in her eyes. She claimed she sincerely apologized for what she had done to me and hoped she could take it all back. It was surreal. I never expected to hear those remarks from Kelly of all people. In addition, I had a better understanding of my parents. Apparently, they were the ones who instilled in Kelly the belief that she needed to outperform me in every aspect if she wanted to be their favorite. She clarified that this was not an apology for what she had done, but rather an explanation. And it really did explain a lot of things. My parents informed her that the boy I was dating was too good to be with me and needed someone better, like her. That's why she pursued him in the first place. I was devastated to discover that I had been blaming my sister for everything that had gone wrong between me and my parents, when it was actually the other way around. My parents had wrecked not only my childhood self-esteem, but also the potential for a healthy relationship between my sister and myself. Both of us ended up crying at the cafe. It was a little awkward, but well worth it. We hugged it out. And now she's a bridesmaid too. She was quite grateful since it would take her mind off the divorce and everything else. I can't wait to see how my folks respond to this. Update 3. I'm a married woman. I realize this update is long overdue, but I've been so busy with the wedding that I couldn't find time to publish. The wedding was all Jonathan and I had hoped for, and I could not have been happier. And no, my parents did not attend. However, They attempted to ruin it by informing all of my relatives that I was a terrible guy and that this marriage was a ruse to bring my sister down. Fortunately, I didn't have to say anything in my defense because Kelly had already cleared everything up. She made a big post and shared it on social media for all of our relatives to see. She described how our parents were to blame for constantly putting us against each other, resulting in this nasty rivalry between us. Of course, Mom and Dad were upset, but there wasn't much they could do but yell at us over the phone, since both of us had already cut off contact with them. So our relatives did come to our wedding. In fact, many of them assured us we had made the proper decision by removing our parents from our life. Most of them had done the same, because what my parents did was genuinely wrong. Kelly and I are gently rebuilding our friendship and making up for missed time. Jonathan, who has been my rock through everything, is likewise delighted now. I don't talk to my parents anymore since they'd never miss an occasion to criticize him either. Basically, we're all better off now that we're not talking to my toxic parents, and I am glad I chopped them off. They do not deserve me. They do not deserve Kelly. I'm finally pleased now. Comments from others. NTA, your parents are insane. I can't believe somebody would put their own girls through this. Seriously, this was messed up. I feel sorry for both you and your sister. Your folks really are the worst. It's good for you that you avoided interaction. OP and Kelly deserve better. Best wishes to you and Jonathan. Wow, that was something. I remember a friend whose parents were continually putting her and her brother against one another. Even they ended up excluding their parents from their lives. This should be a message to all toxic parents. Do not force your children to compete. NTA. I hope you and Kelly are happy right now, OP. You should explore treatment to undo who knows how many years of damage. Good luck to you and Jonathan. Sending you tons of love. Cast out by my family for favoring my golden child, sister, my aunt helped me. Now they seek my help. Am I the asshole for refusing? My life was completely upended 10 years ago when my family, particularly my sister Claire, chose to exclude me from the house. Why? I was viewed as a traitor by them since I managed to pay for my college education without their assistance. I had nowhere to go when I was 18 and ready to start college. All of this was made possible by Claire, the golden child, who consistently made me seem unimportant in contrast. Claire was my favorite from a young age, yet she is 4 years older than I am. She was the object of my parents' obsession. They would practically hold a celebration if she received an A. You understand what I mean when I say, oh, cool. What's for dinner? When I receive an A. My parents treated Claire like a prodigy by the time she left for a prestigious business school. They covered everything, including her expensive clothes, condo, and tuition. I kept my head down in the meanwhile, knowing that I would have to work things out on my own. Upon being admitted to a prominent UK college to study history, I had the hope that I may receive some assistance. However, no. I was told directly by my parents that they were unable to pay for my education. Although I recognized the high cost of college, their refusal to even co-sign a loan really infuriated me. I only asked them to help me escape a lifetime of debt, not to cover everything. However, they declined. Their logic? They were also hoping to launch a small business at the time, so it seems that all of their resources were going toward that. We already paid for Claire's college. We have to think about our future now. I was stuck. When it came to me, my parents were all about being frugal and responsible. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to attend this college, but it felt like they were purposefully creating barriers for me. My parents had no difficulty spending a lot of money on Claire. I had no choice but to ask my Aunt Denise. My dad's older sister, Denise, is the total antithesis of my parents. In addition to being a brilliant neurosurgeon, she is also quite grounded. There was always this strange tension between her and my parents. They would pretend to be kind at family get-togethers, but it was obvious they were angry with her success. Especially my dad detested being overshadowed by her. At first, I didn't want to engage Denise, but I had to. I contacted her to see if she might cover my tuition. She made no hesitation at all. Of course, I'll help. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I was afraid my father would learn. He would go crazy if he found out that I had asked Denise for money behind his back. I therefore pleaded with Denise to keep it a secret. I believed I was safe for a while. I had paid my tuition and was preparing to go to school. Claire then made the decision to sabotage everything. I'm still not sure how she learned that I had asked Aunt Denise for assistance, but she did. And because she was Claire, she had to make it into a tremendous, dramatic ordeal rather than simply letting it go. I felt something wasn't right the moment I got home from a night out with some pals. Everything I owned was put in boxes. My books, my clothes, even my bed linens. Claire was standing there with this smug, self-satisfied expression on her face as my parents were seated in the living room. I had the impression that I had entered a perverse intervention. My father wasted no time. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I looked at the stack of papers he threw at me and said, "Explain this." I became aware that Claire had completely lost her mind at that point. She had created fictitious emails between Aunt Denise and me, giving the impression that I was betraying the family by disclosing information about their business plans in return for Denise covering my tuition. My eyes were unbelievable. In order to make it appear as though I had betrayed my family, Claire had combed through my laptop, discovered actual emails between Denise and me, and altered them using Photoshop or another program. I was taken aback. My parents refused to listen to me when I tried to explain that it was all a lie. No matter what I replied, they continued to say, "We trusted you and you stabbed us in the back." They obviously believed Claire. She was always believed by them. It seemed as though I had vanished from the world. They instructed me to immediately collect my belongings and depart. I told a total lie, which led to my official expulsion from the house. I pleaded with them to think again. Aunt Denise had already promised to cover my tuition, so I didn't want to put her through any more trouble. My parents, however, were unconcerned. They claimed they didn't want to interact with me and labeled me a traitor. That was it. I only had a few boxes of my belongings and the clothing on my back when I fled. Aunt Denise took me in. To be honest, I'm not sure how I would have managed without her. She immediately took me in and showed me the kind of family I hadn't experienced in years. Denise was the only person who truly cared about me while my parents were preoccupied with their future business and worshiping Claire. I will always be thankful for that. But even today, I can't get rid of the memories of that night. Claire standing there with that arrogant expression on her face, knowing she had won, my parents staring at me like I was a criminal, and all of my belongings packed away when I walked into my house. I was standing on Aunt Denise's doorstep, my life in boxes, having been evicted from my own home. I was still trying to figure out what the hell had occurred. It like a nightmare. In a single night, how does one go from feeling like a member of a family to experiencing homelessness? Even though the entire situation seemed bizarre, I couldn't claim to be all that shocked. Although my parents had always made it apparent that Claire came first, I never imagined it would go this far. Being the angel that she is, Denise embraced me wholeheartedly. She didn't pry or ask a lot of questions. She simply told me that her house was mine for however long I needed it after realizing how hurt I was. That type of generosity, man, it really got to me because I knew at that moment that I had never experienced anything like that from my own parents. I thus took up residence with Aunt Denise. Initially, waking up in her guest room and seeing a house that wasn't mine felt weird. But as time went on, it began to feel more like home than the location where I was raised. As we talked about everything, we got closer. As it happens, I had no idea how much Aunt Denise knew about my parents' actions. For years, she had avoided them and only attended family gatherings out of duty. She revealed to me something that completely shocked me. My father had harbored animosity toward her long before I was even born. It had always been Denise's turn. She attended medical school, married a wonderful man who tragically died young, and created a wonderful life. My dad was doing all right in the meantime, but he constantly felt like she was taking center stage. He was strangely competitive whenever they met. According to Denise, their relationship had basically devolved into a contest to see who could appear more attractive to the other members of the family. However, my dad hated his sister rather than being proud of her. And it wasn't just about jobs. He felt dominated in practically every aspect of life, including money and society. Denise suspected that my parents' treatment of me had been influenced by their jealousy. Denise knew all of this years ago, but she chose to remain silent so as not to aggravate me. She told me everything now that I lived with her. She seemed to be filling in all the blanks in my life that had never made sense, like why my parents always went out of their way for Claire and why they never seemed to care what I did. It all came down to a strange family dynamic that I was completely unaware of. Although it was wonderful living with Denise, I was unable to fully unwind. I kept expecting my parents to call, for Claire to suddenly appear, or for them to say they were sorry. Naturally, though, that never took place. Weeks passed, and nothing happened. Not a single phone call, no text. I was initially incensed. How could they just ignore me as if I didn't exist? But eventually the rage subsided and I became numb. My brain seemed to be turning off all of my feelings so that I could continue to function. But Denise was fantastic. Unless I wanted to, Mom never forced me to discuss what had happened. She gave me time to think things through. She even made sure I had all I needed before I departed for the UK by helping me organize everything for school. I honestly don't know how I would have survived that period of time if it weren't for her. However, despite her backing, my parents' silence was terrible. You would think they would at least check in on your child after evicting them. However, no. A part of me still had expectations, even though I suppose I shouldn't have. Claire texted me about a month after the entire incident. It was just as annoying as she was, which is why I can still clearly recall it. The only thing it said was, "Hope you're doing okay. By the way, don't leave your laptop lying around." That was it. She reminded me that she was the reason I was expelled, but she made no attempt to apologize or acknowledge what she had done. As I gazed at the television, my blood began to boil. Simply put, she was making fun of me. I didn't answer. What was the purpose? There was nothing that made Claire feel bad. She thought that she had won some strange family game. I considered responding with a sarcastic text, but I realized it wouldn't change anything. She would simply relish the attention. After blocking her number, I made an effort to move on. It wasn't simple. A part of me was still hoping for a message from my parents every time I checked my phone. It could have been a passive-aggressive email from my dad acting as though nothing had occurred, or it could have been a message from my mom apologizing for everything. However, there was radio silence. Denise and I developed a strong routine in the months that followed. She evolved into more than simply my aunt. She became my companion, confidant, and essentially my sole remaining relative. I began to see how dysfunctional my parents truly were. They had devoted so much of their time to making Claire into the ideal daughter that they had neglected everything else. And it would be too late for them to correct it when Claire made a mistake, which she would eventually do. As I was preparing to leave for school, I received a second message, this one from my father. The message was brief and straightforward. Good luck in the UK. That was it. No explanation, no apology, nothing. It was like being slapped across the face. All he had to say after everything was, good luck. I didn't even know how to react, so I didn't. I tried not to worry about it and simply erased the message. Denise took me to the airport the day I departed for the UK. She gave me a firm hug and expressed her pride in me, saying she knew I would succeed. Those words, spoken to me by a member of my family for the first time in my life, struck me more strongly than I had anticipated. I felt as though I was leaving behind more than just my house when I boarded that plane. I was leaving behind the aspect of myself that had always aimed for my parents' favor. I made the decision that I no longer needed them after that. I had myself, I had Denise, and I had my future. I wasn't going to waste any more energy chasing after people who obviously didn't care about me, but if they wanted to get in touch, that's okay. I was finished. The UK was a terrific place to live. I made some friends, adapted to college life, and stopped worrying about my family all the time for the first time in years. Although I can't claim to have forgotten about them, I can say that I wasn't thinking about them as much. I was concentrating on my education, planning for the future, and simply attempting to live a life free from the stress of being my parents' shadow. Naturally, though, something had to happen and ruin everything just as everything was going well. I came back to my hometown after graduation, got a fantastic, well-paying job, and then my mother called. Yes, my mother. The same woman who had stopped talking to me ever since I was expelled. It came as a complete surprise. My phone buzzed while I was reviewing some notes for a paper in my dorm room. For a while, I thought I was seeing things when I saw her name appear. My thoughts were racing as I gazed at the television. Do I have to respond to it? Disregard it? Why was she calling me now, after all that had transpired? I gave it a few more rings. Then I took up, against my better judgment. Hello, I answered, attempting to sound composed despite my racing heart. She was unsure of what to say, as seen by the delay on the other end. At last she spoke something. Hey. It's your mom. Who else would it be, really? However, I didn't say that. After nearly 2 years of silence, I simply waited for her to explain why she was calling. After hesitating once again, she abruptly stated, "We need to talk." I couldn't resist laughing. She wanted to talk now? After all? It was really normal for her. However, despite my annoyance, I had a natural curiosity. Why was she contacting me after all this time, and what could possibly be so important? How about, I asked in the most neutral tone I could. She stammered as though she was trying to find the perfect way to say it. Your father and I, we want to see you? I could clearly see the direction of this. They didn't want to see me because they felt awful for throwing me out or because they missed me. They were in need of something and I was very certain of what it was. Why? I asked directly. Her delayed response just strengthened my suspicions. Her voice was quieter when she did talk, as if she was attempting to appear worried and maternal. "I've been going through a difficult period with your dad. The pandemic has made things difficult." The true cause for the call was there. It was precisely what I had anticipated: financial difficulties. I knew their business wasn't doing well, but I hadn't heard much about it since I left. Denise had stated in passing that their shop wasn't doing as well as they had hoped, and it made sense that they were having trouble given the pandemic. But after everything they had done to me, I wasn't going to step in and save them. "All right." And, I spoke in a flat tone. I had no intention of making things simple for her. She began, "Your sister, Claire, has been taking care of things for us, but—" I interrupted her at that point. Knowing where this was going, I said, "Let me guess. Claire messed everything up." Her response was sufficient, but there was a lengthy gap on her end. Claire had messed it up, of course. I had no idea why they were taken aback. She always cared more about how she looked than about putting in the effort. It was backfiring. They had trusted her with everything. My mother drew a breathless gasp. She said, "Things haven't been going as planned. And we require assistance." I chuckled. I was unable to resist. They wanted my assistance after everything, after kicking me out, interrupting me, and allowing Claire to run me over? It was unbelievable how bold it all was. "Unbelievable," I whispered to myself. "What's so amusing?" my mother inquired, as though she was truly perplexed and couldn't comprehend why I wasn't seizing the opportunity to intervene and save the day. "Are you serious? Do you genuinely believe that I will assist you?" I said, raising my voice. All the feelings I had been suppressing for the last 2 years were rising to the surface, and I could feel the rage rising. Her voice faltered as she said, "We are your parents. We were not perfect, but however, we require you." Even though she couldn't see me, I shook my head. "Mom, you weren't simply making mistakes. I was ejected from the house by you. You trusted Claire's falsehoods about your own child. You need me now that we haven't spoken in years? And all of a sudden, I'm expected to abandon everything and run?" After then, she was silent. She was clearly unsure of what to say. She most likely wasn't used to me advocating for myself in this way. I would have just followed their instructions when I was still living at home in the hopes that it would maintain harmony. However, it is no longer the case. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me again because I had changed. She spoke at last, but her voice was different. She no longer made an effort to sound kind and kind. She now sounded annoyed, as if she was surprised that I was being so challenging. Sharply, she remarked, "We're still your family. That is at least how much you owe us." The last straw was that. I responded icily, "I owe you absolutely nothing. Go ask Claire for aid if you need it. Remember that she's your golden child." I hung up the phone without waiting for her answer. Even though my hands were shaking and my heart was racing, I experienced an odd sensation of relief. At last, I had expressed what I needed to. I wasn't going to help them sort out their mess. They could do it alone. I informed Aunt Denise about the situation over the phone that evening. She wasn't shocked in the least. She remarked, "They have been depending on Claire for years. It was only a question of time until everything caught up with them." After a lengthy conversation, I was even more convinced that I had made the proper choice. My parents were now suffering because they had favored Claire above me. Even though that seemed harsh, I wasn't responsible for correcting their errors. I felt free for the first time in a long time. I didn't require their acceptance or approval. I wasn't going to allow them to drag me back into their toxic mess now that I had my own life. I had survived their betrayal, therefore I had done my part. It was their time to face the repercussions now. First update. After that phone conversation with my mother, I believed that the family drama was over. To be honest, I was pleased with the way things turned out. At last, I had defended myself and stated unequivocally that I would not serve as their safety net. I assumed they would simply give up and resume relying on Claire. However, I didn't account for my sister's capacity to stir things up. Claire wasn't going to let me get away with it, of course. Something strange happened around 2 weeks after my mom and I spoke on the phone. A knock on the door interrupted my otherwise uneventful Saturday afternoon while I was tidying up around my house. I don't get many visits anymore. I was a little perplexed because I live alone and the most of my friends know to text before they visit. When I peered through the peephole, guess who was there? Yes, Claire. I briefly believed that I might be seeing things. Why had she come here? With the exception of that one dumb text concerning my laptop, she hadn't spoken to me in years, so why was she now showing up at my door as if nothing had happened? Although my first instinct was to ignore her, I knew Claire well enough to know that she would stay until she achieved her goals. Before I could say anything, she grinned as if we were best friends as I opened the door. "Hey," she exclaimed, sounding vivacious and phony. A long time has passed. I was totally unprepared and just stared at her for a moment. Yes, it has. Claire, what are you doing here? She had this incredibly charming look on her face as if she believed she could win me back with charm. She tilted her head slightly and continued. I wanted to talk. May I enter? I remained in the doorway with my arms crossed. How about? I asked, trying to sound as impartial as I could. For a moment, her smile wavered, but she immediately got it back. She tried to seem nonchalant as she said, Come on. Maybe we should just speak inside? It's crucial. I ought to have declined. I ought to have told her to go at that very moment. However, my curiosity overcame me. I didn't bother making her feel welcome, but I moved aside to let her in. I didn't ask if she wanted something to drink, and I didn't offer her a seat. After everything she had done, she was fortunate that I was still allowing her to enter my space. As she entered, she seemed to be taking in the space. She seemed to be trying to strike up a conversation when she said, Nice apartment. I didn't answer. I wasn't here to make friends. All right, Claire, I responded, cutting right to the chase. What are you looking for? She let out a loud sigh as if she was already worn out from the game she was playing. She folded her arms and replied, Mom told me about your conversation. You know, she's pretty upset. I arched an eyebrow. Angry? Claire, she threw me out of the house. What is it that she must be upset about? As if I were the one acting irrationally, Claire rolled her eyes. Look, I'm not here to go over anything again. Both of us are aware that you have always been challenging. The casualness with which she said that nearly made me chuckle. Hard, I said it again. Are you for real now? To get me expelled from the residence, you made up emails. Is that challenging? She dismissively waved her hand. That's from long ago. I came here in order to put things right. Uncertain if I had heard her correctly, I blinked. Would you like to put things right? I asked, my words brimming with doubt. She nodded as if this were the most logical thing ever. Yeah, she answered. I think it's time to move past the family issues, even though I realize they got complicated and I may have overreacted at the time. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Do you believe that you overreacted? I spoke, straining to maintain a steady tone. You ruined my relationship with our parents, Claire. You misled them and said lies about me, and now you're just standing here acting as if it doesn't even matter. I noticed that she was growing irritated as her smile dimmed a bit. Remember, I didn't come here to dispute. I came to ask for your assistance. Finally, I realized why she was actually at my apartment. Claire wasn't here to apologize or make amends, of course. I had to give her something. My jaw tightened as I gazed at her, anticipating her next move. Finally letting go of the artificial sweetness, she stated, I've been trying to keep the business going. However, it has been somewhat difficult. We were severely affected by the pandemic, and even though I'm doing everything I can, it's not enough. We are in danger of losing everything, even though Mom and Dad don't want to acknowledge it. With no pity in my heart, I crossed my arms. I'm going to assume that you want me to help you out. Claire made an uncomfortable move. With defensiveness, she stated, I'm not asking for a handout. I simply believe that we might be able to work something out together. I take it you're doing well for yourself? I assumed you would like to assist the family. She was unbelievable to me. She was attempting to use remorse to persuade me to save the family business, which she had destroyed. You figured incorrectly, I replied bluntly. Claire blinked, obviously unprepared for that reaction. What do you mean? Wait, I said firmly. I mean, I'm not helping you. Not after all of what you have done. Claire, you destroyed my life. Now that you're in difficulty, you expect me to forget that I turned my own parents against me and come to your aid? She looked at me in disbelief. Claire was at a loss for words for the first time in her life. But, we're family. She murmured haltingly, her confidence fading a bit. I gave a headshake. We stopped being family the day you made it your mission to destroy me. Claire's expression turned pale. I could tell she was having trouble processing the fact that she wasn't used to hearing no. She stood up after a long awkward quiet. Fine, she answered icily. If that's how you want it. Saying, that's how it's going to be. I refused to listen. You made your choices, Claire. Now you have to deal with the consequences. She slammed the door behind her and ran out of the apartment without saying another word. I let the strain out of me for a minute as I stood there. I felt guilty, as if I had been too severe. However, that remorse quickly vanished as I realized everything she had done to me. I felt like I was in charge of my life for the first time in years. Claire's shadow no longer surrounded me. I wasn't the scapegoat or the second best option. At last, I was free of it all. Second update. After Claire stormed out of my apartment, I assumed that everything would die down and that she would finally realize that I was done with her and the whole family drama. Naturally, though, I didn't realize how obstinate she might be. The subsequent wave didn't even arrive a week later. Claire wasn't the one who knocked on my door this time. Both of my parents were involved. Funny how these things usually seem to happen on my days off, and it was a Saturday once more. The knock came as I was browsing through my phone while seated on the couch. And it wasn't soft. The knock was one of those loud, persistent ones that indicates the person on the other end isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I stood up, immediately suspecting who it might be. My mother and father were standing together like a united front when I opened the door. My dad appeared uneasy, as if he didn't want to be there. However, my mother? She was determined to clean up whatever mess had been caused, even if it took using force to get through it, according to the expression in her eye. I leaned against the doorframe and sighed. "What do you want?" I suppose my mother was trying to maintain a nice demeanor when she smiled at me. "Can we come in and talk? We need to sort some things out." I wanted to slam the door in their faces, but I reasoned that they would simply keep coming if I didn't let them in immediately. So I sighed loudly and moved aside to let them in. As they entered, they looked about as if they were expecting something more than a simple apartment. My mom immediately headed for the couch, sitting down and stroking the seat next to her as if I were a small child she was attempting to comfort, while my dad remained silent. I crossed my arms and replied bluntly, "I'll stand." "All right," she responded, her smile taut. "Look, we know things have been difficult between us," I said again, raising an eyebrow. "Difficult? That's what you're calling it?" When my dad did speak, it was in a rough, low voice. "We didn't come here to argue." Without even trying to disguise my annoyance, I questioned. "Then what did you come here for?" "Because I'm pretty sure we've already been over everything. Claire tried, you tried, and I made myself clear, I'm not helping." My mother's smile faltered a bit. She most likely wasn't used to me responding in this manner. She leaned forward a little and continued, "That's not why we're here. We're here because we want to apologize." It nearly made me chuckle. Apologize? For what, exactly? Kicking me out? Believing Claire's lies? Or was it that you didn't even bother checking in on me for 2 years? My dad shifted uneasily, as if he would rather be somewhere else than here, and my mom's face hardened. They obviously didn't anticipate me shoving it back in their faces in that manner. My mother added, "We know we made mistakes," in a softer tone. "But we're family, and family has to stick together." I could sense that I was getting impatient. It was just the same thing again. They would whip out the family card as if it were meant to wipe out all the bad things that had transpired. This time, though, I wasn't going to fall for it. I stated rather plainly, "You guys are only here because you need something from me. If things hadn't gone south with the business, I wouldn't even be hearing from you. Let's not pretend this is about family." There was silence for a while. When my dad did finally speak, it was in a rougher but more honest voice than I had heard him in years. "You're right." I was surprised by that. I stared at him and blinked. "What?" "You're right," he said again, letting out a deep sigh. "We screwed up. We believed Claire. We pushed you out, and we didn't even think twice about it. And now, well, now things are falling apart, and we're desperate." I was at a loss for words. I didn't think he would be clean about it. In contrast, my mother appeared to be attempting to maintain her composure. She obviously hadn't anticipated that he would simply put everything out that way. I added, "I appreciate the honesty," following a lengthy silence. "But that doesn't change anything." Then, with a sharper voice, my mother interrupted. "It doesn't change the fact that we need you, and you owe us, after everything we've done for you." Once more, that feeling of entitlement was present. They genuinely thought that simply because they were my parents, I owed them something, as if the years of disregard and partiality had no bearing, and that I should help them out now that they were having problems. "I don't owe you anything," I stated icily. "Not after the way you treated me. You made your choice when you believed Claire over me, when you threw me out and didn't even check if I was okay. Now you want me to save you? That's not how this works." My father remained silent. He just sat there looking shamefully at the floor. However, my mother? She had not finished yet. She raised her voice and shouted, "We're your parents. We raised you, we took care of you, and now you're just going to abandon us?" I nearly felt terrible for her now, so I shook my head. "You didn't take care of me. Aunt Denise did. You chose Claire, and now you're stuck with her. "That's on you." My mom looked like she was going to blow up, but my dad stopped her before she could say anything by placing a hand on her arm. For the first time since they entered, he looked me in the eye as he got to his feet. He answered, "We understand," in a steady but dejected tone. "We're not going to push you anymore. We just needed to try." I nearly felt sorry for him for a moment. That sympathy vanished though, when I realized all they had done to me. I said, "I hope you figure it out," and moved to open the door for them. "But I'm not going to be part of it." My father gave a nod, as if he had anticipated it, but my mother gave me one final glance, part indignant, half begging. However, she got up and followed him out when she realized I wasn't going anywhere. I shut the door after them and stood there for a while, allowing the silence to descend. I had succeeded? For the first time, I felt truly free since I had finally confronted them. When my husband had lupus, my parents abandoned me during pregnancy. They returned years later wanting to be grandparents but never apologized. When my husband was diagnosed with lupus, my parents left me during my pregnancy, saying that he and my unborn child weren't part of their family. They arrived 3 years later and expressed a desire to become grandparents. I severed my relationship with my parents 3 years ago after it became evident to them that my sister was more significant to them than my husband, me, or even their grandson. For background, after nearly a year of symptoms, my spouse was diagnosed with lupus during my second trimester. After multiple testing and hospital stays, we received this diagnosis, and it was a very trying period for us. The news that we were having a baby made us even more anxious. I anticipated my family to help us through this, of course. When I told my parents, they promised to do everything in their power to support me during my pregnancy and after the baby was delivered. Despite our tense prior history, I believed we were becoming closer since my sister moved away after her marriage 7 years ago, thus their pledge meant a lot to me. During her time here, my parents always emphasized her as the golden child. After she moved away and got preoccupied with her life, I believed I had a chance to connect with my parents at last. I was mistaken. I was only viewed by them as a stand-in for their favorite daughter. When my sister came home 2 months after my baby was born and announced her divorce due to her husband's infidelity, this became evident. My parents spent all of their time with her right away, forgetting about me and my relatives. I was heartbroken. Knowing that my husband and I were still adjusting to his diagnosis and frequent doctor's appointments, they had pledged to help with the baby. Because of his illness, which left him exhausted most of the time, I wasn't always able to rely on my spouse at home. Even yet, I was angry with my parents and never blamed him. My parents once became irate and told me that my sister was more significant to them than I was, particularly if I were to compare her to my own family. They claimed that although my sister was their family, my husband and son were neither. I quickly ended the call, blocked them, and never spoke to them again because that sentence was so extremely upsetting. Despite the passage of 3 years, I still can't get it out of my head. I've kept them out of my life ever then, and I want to continue doing so. Fortunately, my in-laws stepped up and provided us with excellent care. They would visit every other day to help with the baby and everything else because they knew my husband was struggling, even during my pregnancy. Even though we got along quite fine without my parents' assistance, it still hurt a lot that they didn't even think of my husband and son, especially their grandson, as members of their family. We have now moved on after 3 years. We can afford to hire a full-time nurse, and last year my husband's web development company took off. We now operate our business from home together after I resigned my job to work with him. It is a practical arrangement. My parents unexpectedly arrived with a slew of gifts a few days after we celebrated our son's 3rd birthday. Since we hadn't spoken for 3 years, they hadn't tried to get in touch, so I was shocked to see them. They didn't even recognize our earlier talk when they got there. They pretended that they had come to meet their grandson and wanted the opportunity to become grandparents, rather than offering an apology. I laughed, closed the door, and refused to interact since their actions were so absurd. After what they said the last time we spoke, I was not going to allow them to meet my son. Their statement that my husband and son were neither their family nor their responsibilities is still fresh in my mind. I wanted them to follow it now. They were agitated and would not go, making noise and pleading with me to open the door in order to clear the air, but I had no interest in doing so. Until they eventually left, I acted as though I couldn't hear them. Despite hearing the entire exchange, my husband and in-laws remained silent until I had composed myself. They talked to me about 30 minutes later and advised me to talk to my parents again, even though I didn't want to give them an opportunity to meet my son just yet. My spouse and his parents feel that I should at least listen to them and consider it calmly. They contend that I would regret not giving my parents an opportunity to explain themselves because they still made the effort to show their, even though it has been 3 years. At least I'll feel good about giving them an opportunity, even if it doesn't work out, and they were the ones who blew it. I followed my instructions. I truly appreciate that my spouse and in-laws were not forcing their opinions on me. I know that their counsel was given out of care. But I simply don't want to speak with my folks. I don't think I need that type of drama in my life right now, and I don't feel ready. I've always had a tense relationship with my parents, and following that most recent argument, I made the decision that I wouldn't talk to them unless they truly apologized. That still hasn't occurred. They didn't offer an apology when they recently appeared. Even if they later apologize, I'll need some time to determine whether their sincerity or desire to maintain a relationship with their grandchild is the reason. I believe I've earned the right to forgive them, so I won't be doing it right away. My sister has always been their top priority, and they have never treated me well. However, I acknowledge that I might regret not providing my parents an opportunity to clarify their position and make amends, as my husband and in-laws have pointed out. I'm unsure of what to do and am bewildered. After 3 years of no communication, am I mistaken for not wishing to speak with my parents? Update: I've given it some thought and read over all of the comments. I really appreciate your advice. I've come to the conclusion that I'm not yet ready to speak with my parents. Their actions have still caused me much emotional pain. They still haven't apologized, and I had decided not to talk to them until they did. They had the opportunity to apologize when they arrived the other day, but they chose not to. After I shut them out, they attempted to speak to me through the door, claiming that we could resolve the matter. They never said the one thing they were expected to say. They were sorry. It's okay. I've gone 3 years without speaking to anyone, and I can do the same for the next 3. My husband and his family and I have spoken about this, and we don't have any animosity. This choice isn't causing us any conflict. They knew how distressed I was when my parents contacted me, so they were only offering me advice out of concern. They don't argue or put any pressure on you. Since several comments seem to cast doubt on their motives, I just wanted to make that clear. The support from my husband and in-laws is tremendous. Even if it were for the benefit of my family, they would never make me do something I wasn't prepared for. My parents were quite kind when I told them how I felt and that I wasn't ready to talk to them. They assured me that they would respect my choice and not put any pressure on me, even if I didn't feel ready at any time thereafter. They made it clear that they would totally support me in making the greatest decision for myself since they trusted me to do so. Although I appreciate their understanding, I simply don't feel prepared to speak with my parents at this time. Right now, I don't want that kind of turmoil in my life. My parents haven't tried to get in touch with me since their visit, which was nearly a week ago. I'm not sure why they made the abrupt attempt to get in touch after 3 years, but I have a feeling they might try again. It's okay if they don't. If they do, they must first apologize before I will engage them. Second update: my sister contacted me earlier this week. She messaged me on Instagram to ask if we could have lunch because she was in the area and I hadn't blocked her. Despite our lack of animosity, my sister and I have never been particularly close. Although we had disagreements when we were teenagers, things have been peaceful ever since. I was hesitant to meet her at first, but I accepted her message because it seemed genuine. We haven't communicated much during the last 3 years, usually simply sharing birthday and holiday greetings. In spite of my suspicion that she would eventually bring up our parents, meeting her wasn't as awkward as I had anticipated. We struck up a conversation. She stated that she has been residing close by ever since her divorce was finalized 2 years ago. She acknowledged that she had been too busy to schedule a meeting with me earlier. We both knew that was untrue, we had just not given each other priority. However, I accepted her excuse because it would have been embarrassing to admit that straight. She told me that after spending her first year back with our parents, she moved to a suburban home and now resides with her partner. She also disclosed that, although she hasn't made the announcement yet, she recently got engaged. I really congratulated her and expressed my happiness for her. I was happy to see her moving on with her life because I knew how deeply her ex-husband's infidelity had wounded her. She eventually brought up our parents after meeting up. Things took an unexpected turn at this point. Since she has always gotten along with them and they have always put her first, I expected her to stand up for them. Although it wasn't her fault, she never seemed to bother. Instead, she informed me that she is currently at odds with them. She acknowledged that she wanted to talk to me about a few things and to express her regret for the past. I was surprised since I didn't think she needed to apologize because our parents, not her, were the source of my problems. But she clarified that her recent altercation with them had caused her to consider what she had done. Even though she knew our parents preferred her, she felt bad about how she had treated me in the past and for never challenging them. She regretted not doing more to address the dynamic, which she was aware of. I urged her not to be ridiculous, but she wanted to apologize for never defending me. What could she have done, really? Our parents, not her, were the issue. She acknowledged that she let things proceed the way our parents desired, but she stated she should have stood up for me. Although I truly appreciated her addressing it, I informed her that I didn't blame her and that she didn't need to feel sorry. She then began to explain to me why she and our parents were currently at odds. She got engaged to her boyfriend, which apparently upset them because they thought it was too soon after her divorce. They were concerned about what people might think and felt that it was inappropriate to think of getting married again so soon. But my sister didn't give a damn about such views. She clarified that she had lost interest in her ex-husband even prior to her divorce. Before she found out about his affair, they had been dragging their marriage along for more than a year. Their relationship had ended a long time ago, and she believed that our parents were being self-centered by expecting her to put off moving on because they were afraid of rumors. Since it's common to move on after a broken marriage, I don't think anyone would find this circumstance intriguing enough to engage in gossip. Her timing is perfectly acceptable. She was also arguing with them about having kids, as if that wasn't awful enough. She is an independent woman who does not owe our parents grandchildren, therefore I found it incomprehensible that she was still answerable to them for her own choices. In spite of this, our parents were fighting about her decision to forgo having children. Our mom tried to persuade our dad that at least her plan to remarry meant she would have children soon, while they were discussing whether it was right for her to get engaged so quickly. She even mentioned my sister's biological clock, saying it was time for her to consider starting a family. My sister had to explain, of course, that she had no intention of having children, not now, not ever. She planned to live a completely childless life. Our parents were even more horrified by this discovery. Her decision to stay childless simply served to exacerbate their already irritated feelings about her hasty engagement. They haven't spoken to each other since this argument got out of hand and caused a significant fallout. My sister broke down at the restaurant while she was telling me this. It was obvious that she wasn't managing the issue effectively. I did everything in my power to console her. Since she had dedicated her entire life to avoiding failing our parents, I could see how difficult it must be for her. She actually said that even when she started experiencing problems in her first marriage, she continued to be in the poisonous relationship because our parents didn't believe that divorce was the answer. Clearly, that marriage had not ended well. Before his affair ended the marriage, her ex-husband had been poisonous, and they had fought nearly every day. My sister made the decision to go her own way this time, even if it meant disappointing our parents. Even though she genuinely loved them and didn't want to lose them, she informed me that she couldn't keep living her life according to their wishes, particularly when it came to important choices like marriage and having kids. Our parents had attempted to persuade her that having a kid would resolve all of their marital issues in her prior marriage. She claimed that because her ex-husband was so toxic, having a kid with him would have simply made matters worse, thus she had escaped a bullet. She told me that she had never wanted children in the first place and that she had made a lot of choices just to appease our parents. For instance, rather than following her own interests, she chose to study business in college because it was what they desired. Our parents had controlled every aspect of her life, and now she simply desired to live her life as she saw fit. I felt terrible for her as she broke down and started crying as I tried to console her. After years of stress and hardship, this mature woman was finally crumbling. I came to see how foolish it had been of me to believe that her life was ideal. Our parents put a lot of pressure on her, and she had been fighting to survive all the time. That same pressure has also caused a rift between us along the way. I made the decision to stop it. We had already squandered too much time acting as though we were unrelated to one another. In actuality, we were sisters, and our parents had destroyed our bond. I refused to allow them to continue to rule our lives. I assured my sister that she could now confide in me about anything. After so many years of avoiding me, I was happy that she had decided to speak with me. I informed her that she didn't need to allow our parents to make her feel bad, because she wasn't doing anything wrong. I encouraged her, telling her she didn't need our parents' approval anymore, and gave her a pep talk. Following their wishes hadn't exactly worked out for her in the past, as evidenced by her first marriage, and she was mature enough to make her own decisions. Even while I couldn't promise that her new marriage would work out, I assured her that if it did, at least she would be responsible for it and not have to hold anyone else accountable. I also mentioned that our parents had come to see me recently in an effort to patch things up. They obviously didn't come to truly apologize or mend our relationship. They were attempting to take advantage of their second chance with my family after realizing they wouldn't have grandchildren from my sister. This insight made my blood boil. I won't allow them to treat my son like a placeholder because he is not. My sister looked scared when I told her about our parents' visit. The timing was simply too shady. They arrived at my home attempting to infiltrate my son's life when they abruptly discovered that their favorite daughter would not be bearing them grandchildren anytime soon. My sister concurred that it was suspicious and assured me that I had made the right decision in refusing to let them in or extend forgiveness. Even if I had been thinking about forgiving them if they apologized after this, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm glad I chose to have lunch with my sister that day to work things out. Despite my initial skepticism, I'm actually happy I accepted the lunch at all. I discovered many things I should have known, but most all, I came to the conclusion that my sister's life was not as idyllic as I had always thought. For me, this changed everything. My in-laws are aware of what I said to my sister, and I have discussed everything with my husband. Since it's obvious that my parents weren't here with the best of intentions, they are adamantly opposed to me making amends with them now. Their hidden agendas were repulsive. My sister and I have stayed in contact ever since. Despite her initial wish for reconciliation, she has made the decision to completely cut off contact with our parents. She acknowledged they didn't deserve it after talking to me. They not only mistreated me, but they also put a lot of pressure on her for years. She informed me that she didn't even know who she truly was for a long time because she had spent so much of her life trying to please them. It may sound cheesy, but for her, that's the real deal. She's had enough now though, and I'm happy that she's standing up for herself. We both need our parents to keep their distance and let us live our lives as we see fit. They've caused enough harm. Third update. My sister and I have been corresponding daily for the past 5 weeks since our lunch date. Sincerely, we both needed this but were unaware of it until now, so I'm extremely happy that we're getting back in touch. We were both made aware of how horribly our parents treated us by that lunch talk. Our parents made another attempt to get in touch with us last week. Since we've blocked them everywhere else, they sent us an email. Even still, their tone was patronizing, as though they were reaching out to us as a favor. We responded that we didn't need that and asked them to avoid us before blocking them once more. We both spent a lot of time attempting to gain their favor, but it's obvious now that we can't win with them. We no longer want to be good daughters to them because they weren't good parents to either of us. We cut them off entirely after sending them our last response. They haven't made another attempt to get in touch since. I hope they leave us alone at last. That negativity is not what I want in my life. They are awful people in addition to being bad parents. I'm glad I stopped seeing them years ago. Because she was so devoted to them, it has been more difficult for my sister. In all honesty, though, it seems more like Stockholm Syndrome. I'm here to support her while she deals with it now. We've become much closer, and I'm even helping to organize her wedding. It says a lot. All I can hope for is that everything goes smoothly and that our parents stay out of it. Fourth update. Last week my sister got married. I had a great time serving as a bridesmaid. They kept it quiet and small. I don't see why my parents couldn't get along with her husband. He seems like a wonderful man. My sister seemed to be truly content in this relationship, therefore it's their loss. They were obviously very happy at the wedding. It's really pitiful that our parents were unable to approve of this because they were worried about what unimportant people would think. My sister and I are clearly getting along well these days. We're actually quite close friends, I'd say. Our parents haven't contacted us in a while. They informed us via email approximately 5 months ago that they were giving everything to charity and that we shouldn't expect an inheritance because we are ungrateful brats. I'm not sure why they felt the need to inform us of that or what they anticipated would occur next. They must be disappointed that we didn't go pleading for their pardon, but it doesn't matter to anyone. I'm content with my life, my son, my spouse, and my in-laws, who are far superior to my parents. My sister is content with her spouse as well. Our parents are free to remain alone and stew in their resentment and hatred. It's really their loss. I bought a house, but my family expected me to house my sister's family for free. I refused, cut them off, and I'm moving to London. I, 35F, work as an investment analyst and am pretty successful in my job. Growing up with an older sister, Victoria, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, I realized early on that if I wanted something, I had to work for it myself. From the start, our parents' treatment of us was noticeably different. When Victoria turned 16, she received a nice new Volkswagen Beetle with a large red bow on top. When it was my turn, I got Dad's ancient Honda, which had 150,000 miles and a tendency to break down. Victoria has always been the ideal child in our parents' eyes. She was the beautiful one, the social butterfly, the one who couldn't do anything wrong. She married her husband, Nathan, 39 million, right after graduation, and they quickly began having children. They currently have 3. Charlotte, 8F, Lucas, 5M, and Andrew, 2M. They live in a rental flat, which Victoria frequently complains about. Meanwhile, I have been more fortunate in my own way. My best friend's parents own numerous properties and have been renting me a wonderful one-bedroom apartment at half of the market rate for the last 5 years. They trust me because I've never given them any reason not to. While Victoria had everything handed to her, I learned to be cautious with money. Since I began working, I've been saving diligently by living within my means, cooking at home rather than eating out, and taking public transportation whenever possible. My coworkers frequently mock me for being overly frugal, but I had a plan. College provided another striking evidence of inequity. Victoria attended her ideal school, with our parents covering all expenses, including tuition, lodging and board, and a hefty monthly allowance. Meanwhile, throughout my final year of high school, I applied for every scholarship I could find, staying up late to maintain my perfect GPA, knowing that it was my last chance at higher study. With remote work becoming more widespread at my company, I just need to come into the office for key meetings. A tranquil country cottage seemed ideal. Last week, I finally opened my savings account and examined the data. After years of diligent planning and saving, I had enough to make a down payment on a small home. I was in the middle of looking through real estate listings when my mother called, with her usual impeccable timing. "Don't forget, we're expecting you for dinner on Saturday," she added, her voice carrying a subtle order disguised as a reminder. "Victoria and Nathan are coming with the kids, and please try to be on time for once." I arrived at my parents' suburban home at precisely 5:05 p.m. that Saturday. Their driveway was already full with Victoria's minivan, so I had to park on the street. Inside, there was the usual chaos. Kids running around, my mother fussing over everyone as if it were a state supper rather than our typical family meeting. My father had already retired into his usual recliner with his newspaper, where he would remain until supper was served. The traditional dinner complaints circulated. Nathan complains about his demanding supervisor and difficult project deadlines. Victoria laments their tight flat and the children's constant demands. Dad expressed concerns about the economy and gas prices. Mom frequently adds to the commotion by commenting on everyone's eating habits and portion amounts. During these evenings, I mastered the art of mental escape. I took advantage of the hubbub by checking my phone under the table and scrolling through a lovely small home I had discovered. 2 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a stunning garden. The pricing was within my budget. The listing images depicted a beautiful wraparound porch, ideal for a set of rocking chairs. The prospect of sitting there with my morning coffee made me happy. "What's so interesting on that phone? You barely touched your food." Mom's piercing voice broke through the background commotion. Her hawk-like eyes never skipped a beat, despite the commotion. I could have made something up about work, but perhaps the warmth of the fantasy still lingering in my head compelled me to be honest. "Actually, I'm looking at houses. I'm thinking about buying one soon." The silence that followed was terrible. You could hear the ice cubes settling in the water cups. Even the children realized something had changed. Charlotte paused in the middle of a conversation about her school performance. Lucas halted, fork halfway to his mouth. Even tiny Andrew stopped slamming his spoon against his high chair. Victoria's head shot up so quickly that I worried she could suffer whiplash. Nathan's incessant rants about his boss ended in mid-sentence. Mom's hand paused in the middle of reaching for the salt shaker. Dad's newspaper descended gently, like a curtain, showing his astonished expression. "Buy a house?" Mom asked, as if she hadn't heard me right. "You?" "Well, yes," I admitted, immediately regretting my candor. The way they all looked at me made me feel like I had announced plans to invade Mars. "I'm just looking at options right now, nothing definite." "What kind of house?" Victoria said, her voice retaining the strangely pointed tone she used when she felt frightened. It was the same tone she used when I received a higher SAT score than she did, just before convincing our parents that I had cheated. "I haven't really decided yet," I answered ambiguously, attempting to change the conversation. But I could sense their minds working, unspoken thoughts nearly palpable in the air. My parents exchanged profound looks, the type they'd honed over decades of marriage. Victoria kept looking at Nathan, who had suddenly become quite interested in his mashed potatoes. The typical supper bustle soon resumed, but something had changed. The talk felt forced, as if players had forgotten their lines and were desperately trying to finish the show. Even the children appeared to pick up on the stress, and their usual loud demeanor subsided. A week later, my phone began to vibrate with Mom's calls, during an important Zoom conference. After her third effort, I called back during my lunch break, expecting an emergency. "Finally," Mom said, her voice practically trembling from joy. "I found the perfect house for you." Martha from church informed her of a listing in her neighborhood. "It's absolutely ideal." I set down my half-eaten lunch, immediately felt a headache forming. Mom, I haven't even asked for help finding a house. But she was now in full stride and unable to halt. It has 5 bedrooms. No, 6. The master bedroom is huge, and there are these adorable children's rooms with built-in closets. I blinked. Oh, and the backyard. There's already a playground installed, can you believe it? And the location is just perfect. Walking distance to St. Mary's Elementary School and the public library. I stroked my temples, trying to remain cool. Mom, I appreciate you thinking of me, but that's not what I'm looking for at all. I want a small country house, something cozy just for me. I don't need multiple children's rooms or a playground. Don't be ridiculous, she yelled, her delight quickly turning into frustration. You can't just think about yourself, you need to plan ahead. This house is perfect. Martha says the owners are motivated to sell quickly. After she hung up, Victoria began sending out an endless stream of postings for large family houses. Each subsequent message delivered another 4 to 6 bedroom house with numerous baths, large yards, and close proximity to schools and parks. By the 20th message, I had stopped checking. It was evident that they weren't listening to what I really wanted. Instead, I contacted Amanda Cha, a realtor with glowing recommendations. During our first encounter, I was struck by how well she listened. I want something small and cozy, I explained. A country house, not too far from the city, with good internet for remote work. Maybe a small garden where I could grow herbs and vegetables. When I told her about my pricing range, her eyes brightened up. I think I might have exactly what you're looking for. It just came on the market yesterday. The house she showed me was ideal, a lovely 2-bedroom cottage located 40 minutes from the city. White siding, dark green shutters. A wraparound porch with room for rocking chairs. Sunlight poured in via huge windows onto an open-plan living room. The kitchen was not large, but it had been redone with butcher block worktops and modern appliances. A wood-burning fireplace dominated the living room wall, and I could envision nice winter days spent reading beside it. Upstairs, there were 2 modest bedrooms and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub, which I fell in love with right away. But the sunroom sealed the deal. There are windows on 3 sides that view a well-kept garden with raised beds and a small greenhouse. I could immediately envision myself spending weekends there, surrounded by greenery and natural light. The owner offered a quick closing discount, and I accepted without hesitation. The following few weeks were a blur of paperwork and preparation. I put down a larger down payment than was required, keeping the monthly payments manageable, using the money I had carefully saved all these years. While my family undoubtedly believed I was being cheap, I was actually building my future. After everything was finalized, I planned to announce the news at the next family dinner. Mom had just started discussing another house. Barbara next door is selling. She'll give us, you, a good price. Actually, I interrupted, unable to suppress my joy, despite their past attempts to sway my decision. I've already bought a house. The hush was absolute. Even Charlotte, who is normally unstoppable, paused in mid-motion. I took a big breath and began detailing my new house, my voice full of enthusiasm despite the mounting tension around the table. It's this beautiful cottage, about 40 minutes outside the city. 2 bedrooms, the most amazing sunroom, and there's even a small greenhouse in the backyard. The previous owner had these gorgeous raised garden beds. My father's fist hit the table with such power that the water glasses jumped. Are you out of your mind? He exclaimed. I had never seen him that angry before. Andrew burst into tears as he heard the startling boom. How dare you buy a house without consulting us first? My mother's cheeks had turned an alarming red. After all those perfect family homes we found? Why would I need to consult you about buying my own house with my own money? I inquired, feeling as if I had wandered into some strange parallel dimension. Because we had it all planned out, Mom practically screamed. Barbara's house would have been perfect, right here in the neighborhood, plenty of room for everyone. Room for everyone? I asked slowly, growing confused. It's just going to be me living there. The hush that ensued was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged glances as Victoria sat there with an unusually serene demeanor. Nathan was suddenly quite interested in his plate. Actually, Mom explained in a tone that made my blood run cold. The plan was for Victoria, Nathan, and the kids to live there with you. I waited for the punchline. It didn't arrive. Victoria nodded, as if everything was totally normal. We're so cramped in that apartment. Your house would give us all the space we need, and since we wouldn't have to pay rent or utilities, we could finally start saving money. I gazed about at their dead serious expressions. Dad's severe condemnation, Mom's righteous rage, Victoria's entitled expectation, Nathan's awkward avoidance. Years of memories flowed back. Every time, Victoria got what she wanted while I worked twice as hard for half the pay. Every time, my successes were ignored while her slightest achievements were praised. You all just assumed I would buy a house for Victoria's family to live in? Well, of course, Mom threw out her hands, as if I was being intentionally cryptic. That's what family does. This isn't helping. This is expecting me to house 5 people without even asking me. You're being selfish, Victoria shouted, her cool demeanor breaking. The kids have to share rooms? Andrew's crib is in our bedroom. It's not fair to them. You need to cancel this ridiculous purchase immediately, Mom commanded, her voice harsh with the control she had exercised over me for 35 years. Barbara's house is perfect, right in the neighborhood. No. I stood up, scraping my chair against the floor. The word came out stronger than I expected, bearing the weight of decades of pent-up rage. Chaos erupted. Mom jumped up and waved her arms. Dad's voice roared. The children started crying. But we'll be so cramped, Victoria moaned, like if I hadn't said anything. Charlotte has ballet. Lucas has soccer. You're not going to be cramped anywhere because you're not living in my house, I said calmly. None of you are. Ever. Is that clear enough for you? They stared at me as if I had a second head. The entitled shock on their faces was nearly amusing. How can you be so cruel to your own sister? Mom asked, clutching her pearls and her voice shaking with wrath. I grabbed my handbag and walked towards the door, their shouts rising behind me in a cacophony of demands and accusations. I couldn't hear another word. I got in my car and drove home in a haze, their entitled expectations still echoing in my ears. Update 1. The aggressive knocking on my flat door began as I was packing the kitchen. The coffee mug I was wrapped in newspaper slid from my grasp but landed safely on a mound of packing paper. Open this door right now, my father's voice rang through the wood. We know you're in there. I froze, bubble wrap still in my fingers. More thumping ensued. Go away, I yelled back. I'm not discussing this anymore. Don't you dare talk to us like that. Dad's fist caused the door to rattle in its frame. We raised you better than this? My hands trembled as I took up the phone. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police, I mean it. I pulled up the keypad and purposefully pushed digits, ensuring that they could hear the beeping. I'm dialing right now. Dad's curse was broken by Mom's sudden intake of air. We're leaving. Mom's voice had become as icy as ice. But this isn't over. You're making a terrible mistake. I slid down against the wall, my heart thumping, after hearing their footsteps disappear down the corridor. An hour later, Victoria sent the first message, which included a photo of Charlotte and Lucas squished together on their shared bunk bed. Look how little space they have, the caption stated. Charlotte can't even have a desk for homework. When I didn't answer, another photo appeared. Andrew's crib squeezed into the corner of Victoria and Nathan's room. He wakes up every time we come to bed. This isn't fair to him. As I continued to ignore her, Victoria's communications became increasingly hostile. They began arriving at all hours. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. You always were Dad's least favorite. Mom cries herself to sleep because of you. I hope you're happy all alone in that big house while your nieces and nephews suffer. I blocked her phone number. Then her Facebook. Then her Instagram. But she kept finding new ways to contact me, setting up new accounts, using Nathan's phone, and even inventing false email addresses. The phone calls began to come from different directions. First, there was Aunt Marie. Sweetie, I just heard what's happening with your sister. Surely, you can find it in your heart to help family. Uncle Bob was next. Kid, you need to think about what really matters here. Family comes first. Susan is my mother's dearest friend. Your mother is devastated. How could you do this to your own family? Even my former high school teacher, Mrs. Peterson, whom my mother still saw at church. I always thought you were such a kind student. I'm so disappointed to hear about this situation with your sister. They all sent the same message. I was selfish. Heartless, cruel. I should give up my home, my goals, and my independence to help Victoria. None of them seemed to wonder why Victoria's living predicament was my concern. After 2 weeks of incessant pestering, I'd had it. I went to my cell carrier and changed my phone number, giving it solely to my employer and a few trustworthy pals who had not chosen sides in this fiasco. Moving day was blissfully quiet. I chose a moving firm I'd never used before, ensuring that my relatives couldn't track my address using common local services. The movers worked quickly and professionally, and by dusk, I was standing in my new living room, surrounded by boxes and possibilities. That first night at my cottage, I sat on my veranda with a cup of tea, listening to the crickets and watching the stars appear. There's no traffic noise, no sirens. There's no family turmoil. Just peace. I felt something inside me suddenly relax. A tightness I hadn't realized I'd been lugging around for years. I occasionally checked their social media updates. Victoria posts passive-aggressive status messages about family betrayal and selfish siblings. Mom's barely veiled posts about ungrateful children and family obligations. Relatives and family friends made comments, everyone taking sides without understanding the whole tale. But here's the thing. None of it concerns me anymore. Their comments can't reach me in my new refuge. I turned the second bedroom into a home office, positioning my monitors to face the window so I can watch birds visit the feeder I erected. The previous owner's raised garden beds are currently overflowing with herbs and vegetables. My first try at gardening was surprisingly successful. For the first time in my life, I am living fully on my own terms. And it feels really liberated. Update 2. Something unexpected occurred today. Remember the large investment project I've been working on remotely from my new home? It paid out hugely. My manager summoned me to a virtual meeting to inform me that I had not only received a significant bonus, but was also being considered for a director job. My new environment's quiet and focus had enabled me to excel at work in ways I had never believed possible. Without regular family interruptions and emotional exhaustion, I found myself proposing new ideas and taking on leadership roles naturally. This triumph, however, resulted in an interesting development. Victoria's apartment complex was sold to a developer who intends to transform it into luxury condominiums. All tenants received eviction notifications with a 60-day notice to vacate. I learned from family members that Victoria and Nathan were having difficulty finding a new place that fit their budget. The timing could not have been better. My promotion comes with a large salary boost, and I chose to utilize my bonus to make down payment on a lovely holiday home in the mountains. It's essentially an investment, as property values in that neighborhood have skyrocketed. Today, I received a well-phrased email from Nathan, not Victoria, interestingly enough. He described their predicament and asked if I would like to negotiate housing arrangements again. The old me may have felt guilty. Despite everything, I could have considered helping. But I simply gave them some local apartment listings that fit their budget and wished them luck in their quest. Mom took a different approach. She showed up in my workplace building. I suppose she got the address from LinkedIn. With tears in her eyes, she described how she and her father were suffering with their retirement money and had always relied on the family sticking together to help each other in their golden years. I listened politely. Then I stated that my financial advisor had advised against combining family and financial commitments. Her face turned a familiar shade of red. But this time, in the professional setting of my company lobby, she couldn't cause a fuss. The family's social media campaign has taken a unique turn. They are now writing about wealthy people who have lost touch with their roots, as well as stories on toxic individualism in modern society. My aunt even wrote a lengthy Facebook post about how money can transform people, to which hundreds of people responded sympathetically. But they are unaware that my accomplishment has drawn the attention of headhunters. Several famous firms, including one in Europe, have expressed interest in hiring me. The idea of putting an ocean between myself and this drama is getting more enticing. Meanwhile, my new greenhouse is flourishing. I've started growing exotic orchids, which are delicate and require time and attention to detail, similar to creating a job or limits. I'm discovering that the most satisfying experiences in life require time and effort to cultivate. I joined a local gardening group, which has become a fantastic source of camaraderie. These people have no idea about my family issues. They just know me as the woman who brings homegrown herbs to meetings and asks in-depth questions about soil pH. It's refreshing to be judged entirely on who I am, rather than my willingness to give up my life for the sake of others' convenience. Yesterday, I held my first dinner party in my new house. Colleagues, gardening friends, and neighbors gathered at my dining table to share wonderful food and conversation. No one asked anything from me, except possibly the recipe for my herb-crusted salmon. The evening was filled with laughter, intelligent conversation, and mutual respect, all of the things that family gatherings should be but never are. As I watched my visitors have fun on the porch and fireflies dance in the yard beyond, I realized something important. I haven't simply purchased a house. I've built a life. A life that is totally my own, free of the burden of others' expectations and entitlements. Allow them to submit their passive-aggressive messages. Let them discuss family duty and obligation. I'm too busy thriving to worry. Update 3. The last elements of my win fell into place today. Victoria and Nathan were unable to acquire a new apartment. Their credit check found some alarming findings. They're currently temporarily residing with our parents, with all 3 kids squeezed into the guest room. Meanwhile, I received an official offer for the director post in our London office. The remuneration package is outstanding, including a lovely, company-provided flat in Kensington. When I announced my acceptance on LinkedIn, professional congrats flooded in. The contrast between my colleagues' sincere support and my family's harsh silence was startling. The most rewarding moment was when Dad called. His voice lacked the usual authority. He began by casually asking about this London foolishness, but it soon became evident why he was calling. The recent market slump has significantly reduced their retirement savings. They'd reportedly planned to sell their home and move in with Victoria's family, in the house they anticipated me to buy. "We always assumed we'd all be together," he added, his voice unusually shaky. "Your mother and I aren't getting any younger." I stayed professional and detached, offering a great financial advisor I know. She specializes in retirement planning for seniors. I'll email you her contact information. My family is unaware that I have already made arrangements to manage my mountain home as a premium vacation rental. The predicted income is impressive, more than enough to pay Victoria's whole monthly rent, strangely. But it is not information I intend to convey. Today, I held a farewell garden party for my local friends. The greenhouse was in full flower, with orchids providing a beautiful backdrop. As I watched my visitors have fun, someone commented on how much I've changed since moving here, how I appear more confident and at ease. Later that evening, while packing for London, I discovered an old photo album. There was a photo of teenage Victoria receiving her brand new Volkswagen, and I was standing in the background next to Dad's ancient Honda. The recollection no longer stings. Instead, it makes me realize how far I've come. I am retaining my rustic cottage. It will be my getaway when I visit the United States. The garden will be maintained by a nice retired couple from my gardening group, while the house will remain my sanctuary, free of family strife. Tomorrow I'll board a flight to London. My family does not yet know. They will find out when they see my social media posts from Hyde Park or along the Thames. Victoria will probably write about sisters who desert their families. Mom will share articles on expats who regret abandoning their loved ones. But sitting here in my sunroom one final time before my early morning journey, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors, I feel nothing but peace. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning the battle, but choosing to leave the battlefield entirely. Allow them to deal with their cramped living conditions and financial challenges. I'll be too busy enjoying my new life in London to read their social media updates. Sometimes the best retaliation is simply living well.